My 5-year husband abruptly and mysteriously filed for divorce. But I heard a startling exchange with his friend that told me everything. 5 years ago, I, a 30-year-old woman, married my 32-year-old husband. After almost 2 years of dating, I was completely smitten with him. I therefore said yes, without hesitation when he proposed to me. I was a surgeon at the time, and my husband was an actor who was having trouble finding a job. I paid for practically everything in the house, but I didn't mind at all. I was more than willing to pay all the bills since I wanted him to pursue his goal. Despite frequently being cast as an extra in most sequences and earning only half of what I did, he never gave up. He recently got a small part in a feature-length movie. I was ecstatic for him. For him, it was a huge event even though he just had 10 to 15 minutes of screen time. Everything appeared to be going well, and in a few weeks they were set to begin filming for his part. But 5 days ago, my husband unexpectedly served me with divorce papers, and my entire world came apart. I was caught completely off guard. I didn't think he would ask me to get a divorce. I felt the same way about him as he had about me. Everything happened so quickly. He said he no longer felt the same way about me when I asked him why. He claimed that now that he was at last receiving serious offers, he wanted to focus more of his time and efforts on his work. He said that this was only the beginning of his career and that he desired a new beginning, one that excluded me. He claimed that the burden of his former life, which reportedly included me, could not hold him down. I was heartbroken. It was unbelievable to me that he was saying this after all the sacrifices I had made and the times I had put his aspirations ahead of my own. That day, I sobbed for hours and pleaded with him to reconsider our marriage, but he refused to listen. He said that he no longer felt anything for me and that there was nothing more to be done. He thought it would be better if we split up now. I was devastated when he packed up his things and departed. I spent the following 4 days completely lost. I was so depressed that I didn't even go to work. I kept hoping that this nightmare would end. After that, my hubby called me yesterday. He had a meeting the following day, so he asked if I could leave some of his formal attire at his friend's house, where he was staying. In the hopes of meeting him face to face and perhaps persuading him to return, I gladly consented. I had no choice but to go to his friend's apartment since I was desperate. When I got there, I heard my husband and his friend conversing inside, and I saw that the door was slightly open. As I was ready to knock, his friend asked him why he had married me in the first place if he had no intention of staying. I was interested in that. I made the decision to remain silent and listen in the hopes of learning more. I had entered at the perfect, if unpleasant time, and it felt like they had already been discussing me. My husband laughed before responding to his friend's inquiry, and he continued by saying that he married me simply to utilize me to advance in his job. He acknowledged that his heart didn't love me. He had cheated on me numerous times over the years with unidentified women he met at parties or on set. I nearly gasped, but I was able to hold myself back. I wanted to hear more from my beloved hubby. He went on to say that a friend of his had introduced us, telling him that I was the daughter of a well-known dentist. My dad is among the state's top dentists, so that much was accurate. My husband was also aware that my dad frequently worked with a well-known actor. Some of his acquaintances in the business had told him about this. Everything started to make sense to me as he talked. He described how he had reached out to me in a desperate attempt to salvage his acting career. It was only a plus that I was rich and, in his opinion, easily influenced. He claimed to love me for 5 years while he waited for a chance to meet my dad's well-known customer. About 5 months ago, at my dad's 50th wedding anniversary celebration, that chance presented itself. Many of my dad's acquaintances, including his most well-liked customer who was also a close friend, were invited. My husband charmed him, spoke with him at the party, and even exchanged phone numbers with him. I didn't know at the time. Due to his hectic schedule, my dad's customer was only at the party for approximately 30 minutes, but within that brief period, my husband was able to get his number. Even though I hate him today, I must admit that when my spouse feels like it, he can be very charming. I wasn't shocked that he was able to pull it off. But I was surprised to learn that my husband had spent 5 years of our life together, causing me unspeakable heartache, all for his own self-serving ends. And to top it all off, I helped him get his current position. On the recommendation of my dad's client, the film's director signed him. I am the one who has been betrayed and is now being discarded through divorce, even though I am the one who made this huge career breakthrough. At that moment, I wanted to go in and give him a face punch, but I controlled myself. I drove home after making my way back to my car on foot. I had plenty of time to analyze my anger and devise a strategy to exact revenge on this self-centered monster because this incident occurred yesterday afternoon. I tried to relax by meditating after I got home. I was enraged and worried that if I didn't manage my emotions, I may physically harm him. I made every effort to divert my attention and devise a scheme to ruin him. Asking my dad for the actor's number, calling him, and insisting that my husband be removed from the movie was one of my first ideas. But since it was a professional issue, I wasn't sure if it would work or if my viewpoint would be taken seriously. I've known my dad's client since my undergraduate days. He knew me much better than he knew my husband, even though we weren't really close. After speaking with my parents, I finally thought it was worth a shot and gave him a call in the evening. I thought there was still a chance to make things better, so I hadn't notified anyone about the divorce yet, not even my family. I was so anxious because this was the first time I was going to admit it. His assistant finally got me through after multiple calls. Following some awkward small conversation, I spoke without pausing and said everything I needed to say. I revealed that my husband had cheated on me and secured a movie role through my dad's and my connections. I requested that he use his power to get my husband fired, stating that this would be the correct thing to do if there was any justice in the world. I'm sure he was as uneasy hearing it as I was speaking it since I said it all at once. There was a pause before he stated he would investigate. After saying thank you, he hung up. The whole experience made me feel ashamed, but it was over. At this point, my only option was to wait for a response from him or my spouse. About 10 o'clock at night, 2 hours later, my spouse began calling me in a panic. I understood then that he must have already been dismissed. I was shocked at how fast it had transpired. I texted the man who made it happen to say thank you. He hadn't had much trouble taking care of it because there hadn't been a legal contract, just a verbal understanding. He responded to my text with good wishes for the future, which I found to be quite considerate and gave me hope again. Without a care in the world, I turned off my phone, disregarded all of my husband's calls and texts, and went to bed. I'm not lying when I say that I had the best sleep of my life. As I was getting ready to go for work this morning, I heard my husband yelling for me from outside my door and pleading with me to open it. I told him to go because I had to leave for work and didn't intend to let him in. He was unwilling to give up though, and insisted that I have one final conversation with him before removing him from my life. I eventually grew tired of his shenanigans and let him in, telling him that I would not waste my time again. He sobbed as he dropped to his knees and admitted that he had erred. He pleaded for another opportunity, saying that I was the only woman he had ever loved. However, I no longer felt sorry for him because I knew how talented an actor he was. After letting him cry for a few minutes, I inquired about the success of his acting role in the movie. I deliberately used a mocking tone because, let's face it, that's precisely what I was doing. He appeared shocked for a second before realizing what had happened. He went crazy when he realized that I was the reason he had lost the chance of a lifetime. He began yelling in my face, saying that I had ruined his life and that I would be held accountable. I also didn't hold back. I shouted back at him, telling him that he deserved this, if not worse, because he had destroyed 5 years of my life. After what seemed like 5 minutes of us yelling at one another, he finally broke down. He was aware that no amount of yelling and yelling would restore what he had lost, neither the role nor the happy life he had been having with me. He was solely responsible for his own actions. Even though he was crying, he made sure to tell me that he would take everything from the divorce and leave me on the streets, which made me feel almost terrible for him. Those were fairly audacious remarks, and any pity I might have had for him was instantly gone. I told him to leave my place as respectfully as possible. He complied, leaving while still sobbing and mumbling obscenities. That day, I made the decision to skip work once more. I wasn't feeling well, and the events had been terrible and weighty. First update. At last, I disclosed the divorce to my family and acquaintances. They were just as caught off guard as I had been when my spouse initially expressed his desires to me. But they were all appalled when I told them what I had heard at his friend's place. They even said that what he had done to me was far worse than my vengeance. When my dad learned that my husband had taken advantage of both him and me to further his objectives, he became quite angry. He wanted to go to my husband's house and use his fists to make him understand, but I was able to calm him down. I'm happy that most people concur that my actions were appropriate. My husband's treatment of me was so harsh. It permanently damaged my trust in marriage and men. He deserved to be punished for his efforts, in my opinion. I had spent many years and a significant amount of money on our marriage, just as he had spent years on his work. I don't think it matters that I destroyed his career on my own if he could destroy our marriage on his own. He keeps contacting me online, pleading with me to retract my remarks and assist him in regaining the part, as if he had been cheated out of a chance. Despite my efforts to block his accounts, he continues to create new ones out of desperation. I'm now thinking of completely stepping away from social networking. After everything he's done, I don't see why he feels entitled to get in touch with me. I hope he eventually understands that he's done and that there's no turning back. It appears that his threats to destroy me throughout the divorce were mostly verbal. We both understand that he cannot harm me in any way. Second update. A few days ago, I erased my social media account and blocked my husband. But it appears that I also need to update my phone number. I've had between 70 and 80 spam calls from various numbers since last night. I'm going wild over it. My phone is constantly buzzing every few minutes, and it's always from a different number. I know it's him, but I'm not sure how he's doing it. I even gave him a call to tell him to stop and to be aware that his actions would have an impact on the settlement. I was obviously bluffing. No deal is possible. I was attempting to use it as leverage to get him to quit pestering me, even though I owe him nothing. He was adamant about denying any role in the calls though. His voice made it clear to me that he was lying, which only made me feel more irritated. As I was about to cry at the end of the conversation, he hinted that if he were to miraculously regain his role, the calls may cease. The final straw was that. I yelled as many colorful profanities as I could at him before shutting off my phone. I have been using my laptop to surf the internet and have yet to switch it back on. I only intend to switch my phone back on after I have a new number. Since he will no longer be able to reach me, hopefully it will stop him from making me insane. Everyone is aware that I will not challenge the divorce. In a few days, we are expected to appear in court. I don't understand why he is acting inappropriately when he is well aware that we will soon be in court together. He is also aware that if I so desired, I could make his situation far worse. I'm lucky he doesn't. I want to let this whole thing go without a struggle since I've already done what I have to do. I can't go on if I hold on to this anger and allow him to bother me. I'm eager to close this phase of my life. I don't care what happens to him. I'm no longer concerned about his future success or failure. Third update. My husband and I are scheduled to appear in court the day after tomorrow. Naturally, he couldn't allow that to occur without acting in a crazy or psychotic manner. I was certain that he could no longer contact me because I had canceled my social media accounts and changed my phone number. I believed that he would be forced to give up since I had finally defeated him. But I didn't realize how insane he really is. My hubby unexpectedly showed up and sat down next to me in the passenger seat last night as I was getting ready to drive home. Before I could even react, he closed the doors. I quickly retrieved my pepper spray from my purse after realizing what was going on. He grabbed the purse and threw it into the back car, but I was too late. I was so scared that I was willing to do anything he asked me to get out of this predicament safely. It became even more frightening when he spoke to me in a calm manner. When he stated that he didn't want much, I called my dad's actor client, retracted my statement, and made sure he was given his role back. I pretended to agree, telling him that in order to make the call, I required my phone out of my handbag. Now, my hubby is definitely stupid, but I'm not. When he gave me the handbag, I immediately reached for my pepper spray and sprayed him with half of it at once. His condition was much worse than mine, which was watering and stinging horribly. He was having trouble breathing, spluttering and coughing. I pulled him out of the car, unlocked the doors, and drove off, leaving him coughing on the ground. Before I had to stop, I had only made it out of the parking lot and a few yards from my place of employment. I realized I couldn't drive home in my current state of vision impairment, so I got out of my car. Fortunately, a taxi arrived, and the driver appeared to be a friendly individual. He volunteered to drive me to the closest police station after seeing something was strange. Without hesitation, I agreed. The 2 hours that followed were a haze. After what had transpired in the parking lot, I was still in shock. Although I had always known my spouse was insane, this was much more than I had anticipated. It was difficult to accept that after 5 years of a happy marriage, this man was suddenly causing me to suffer through this nightmare. Fortunately, he was taken into custody. Because of his condition, he had been unable to leave the parking lot. His face was still red and a little puffy when they took him to the station. The fact that he was in pain made me happy. I left the station after pressing charges, but I went to my parents' house instead of home. I haven't left their house since I got there because I no longer felt safe being by myself. The support from my parents has been tremendous. One little comfort during this journey has been that they have been treating me like their little girl once more. This time, I'm not stopping my dad from fulfilling his commitment to make sure my husband receives a suitable punishment. It is imperative that certain guys realize that they cannot bully women and get away with it. Fourth update. Hello to everybody. A few weeks have passed since my last update, and I'm pleased to report some positive developments. For what he did to me, my husband received a 3-month prison sentence and a hefty fine. I believe this result is fair, even though I wish the punishment had been lengthier. Given the circumstances, we were able to expedite the divorce process, and it will be completed much sooner than typical. I'm so relieved that he doesn't have any compensation rights. In order to make sure he can't find me again, I've also sold the house and my car. In addition to being superior, the new hospital where I work is also nearer to my parents' house. For me, commuting is far more convenient. Even though my spouse can no longer reach me, at least not for the foreseeable future, they won't let me return to living alone, so for the time being I'm still living with my parents. To my surprise, I don't mind remaining with them. As I'm still getting over the shock of everything that's transpired, their support has been consoling. In order to better digest my feelings, I've also begun going to therapy. I'm aware that recovery will take time and that things won't return to normal right away. I try my hardest to move on, but sometimes I can't help but think back on the years we had together. Some of the moments felt so real that it's difficult to realize it was all falsehoods. Every time I find myself thinking about him, I make myself recall the events that followed, particularly the parking lot incident. That brings me back to the here and now. I'm taking things one day at a time, even though I know these wounds won't heal right away. I'm hoping that I'll be all right shortly. And to be honest, I can't wait for that day. Am I the asshole for excluding my cheating husband from the delivery room and naming our baby without him? This is a throwaway account because I'm so annoyed and need to vent. This will be a lot, so I'm sorry in advance. I, 28F, had been together with my husband, 27M, for nearly 10 years. We got married at 21, had our first son a year after, followed by our daughter 3 years later. I built my whole life around my family. We got good jobs. He worked full-time, I worked from home, we had a good home in a great neighborhood, and we put our children in good schools. We also had a successful business on the side. I thought we did everything right. My best friend, since we were in middle school, lived close. We had our daughters around the same time, and we'd have playdates all the time. We leaned on each other a lot. I gave her all the support when she was going through issues with her daughter's deadbeat father and got her in contact with a good lawyer. I leaned on her when I was recovering from my traumatic second birth and the depression that followed. We leaned on each other for everything. 10 months ago, I found out I was pregnant for the third time. I was really uneasy about this because of my traumatic experience the second time. Also, my husband and I both agreed we were done after our 2 children. I considered abortion, but my husband insisted we keep it. I was still uneasy about the pregnancy and borderline miserable for the next 6 months. I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum and was throwing up 20 times a day for 6 months straight. I lost a ton of weight, had to stop working, and was sent to the hospital frequently due to severe dehydration. My husband stood by me and showered me with attention, for which I was so grateful. He cut down his hours at work to look after me, the house, and the kids. My best friend would come to our home frequently to check on me and also help with the house. When I hit 6 months, the hyperemesis gravidarum decreased a lot, and I was almost back to myself. One night after having a movie night with my family, my husband and I were getting ready to sleep. He fell asleep right away while I quickly checked on the kids before getting into bed. His phone was vibrating like crazy, so out of genuine curiosity, I unlocked his phone. We used to do this a lot when we were younger, so I didn't think too much of it. I was already sitting in bed. I saw messages from my friend. They were frantic spam messages. One of them said, "Please come over, I need you." Another said, "I know I shouldn't be messaging here, but I miss you. And come over when she's asleep." I think I was there in a daze for nearly 5 minutes. I cried a lot quietly, and the fatigue kind of left me. I scoured his phone looking for more. I saw emails and DMs from them both, even using apps like Kick to Message, and the pictures. But the worst part was finding out my husband left me one time in the hospital with my mother while he went back home, where my kids were being babysat by my friend, and got intimate in our bedroom, with our kids in the house. I kicked him out the following morning after confronting him and filed for separation sometime after. For the next 2 months, he had been begging for forgiveness, then complaining and insulting me that I'm not letting him see his kids, or that I'm stopping him from going with me to doctor appointments, which I had been. We had planned months earlier about who was going to be in the labor room. It was going to be my mother and husband. He called me when I was 35 weeks, questioning the labor situation. At this point, he had moved in with my ex-friend's house shortly before this call. I said no, and he got very angry. Lots of my in-laws and family members told me to put our differences aside for our baby. I still said no. I gave birth to my son with my mother and sister present and didn't feel any regret about my choice. After my second traumatic birth, I just wanted to make sure this one was as stable as possible, which it was. We were going to name our child after his father who passed away. I went along with it to make him happy but changed my mind and picked a name I had always loved since childhood. This aggravated him even more. AITA? Because I'm being guilt-tripped by many people right now. All I want is for everyone to leave me alone and for me to just be with my kids. Edit. Just wanted to add that I do let him see the kids. That would be crazy if I didn't. My children love their dad. I just have certain boundaries now that we aren't together, and he doesn't respect them. He gets angry and says things that are categorically not true. He got to meet our newborn son hours after I gave birth. Update. So, I'm back after nearly a whole year. I completely forgot about this post because I've been so wrapped up in other things. For anyone who doesn't want to read the whole post, here's a summary. My husband had been cheating on me with my best friend while I was pregnant. I was close to giving birth and decided not to have my then husband in the labor room with me. I also chose a name for our baby that he didn't agree with. Like I said, it's basically been a whole year. My baby turned 1 today, and after celebrating his birthday and Christmas with my kids, it finally hit me that this is my new reality. First of all, my ex-husband and I finally went through with the divorce proceedings. I had been holding it off during my pregnancy and early postpartum period to avoid added stress and to carefully plan for my children and myself. I was awarded primary physical custody of our children. Their dad visits once a week, and the 2 older kids, 7 and 4, spend every other weekend with him. My youngest will start doing the same in a couple of months, which makes me nervous. He's especially clingy with me, all my kids are, but my youngest has really only known me as the most present parent. One of the main stipulations in our custody agreement is that my ex's affair partner is prohibited from seeing the kids. My poor kids have been confused enough by their parents' sudden split, and I didn't want them even more confused by seeing their aunt, who is supposed to be mommy's best friend, with their dad. It was deemed emotionally detrimental in court. As for the baby name, he's been so bitter about it, I think he's still mad about it. His side has been trying to convince me to change the name to something we'd both like, especially after the divorce was finalized. But it's been a year now, and the baby quite literally answers by the name I gave him, so I'm not going to be changing it. He was also unhappy with the child support payments, among other payments, and asked for some revisions. One main thing he asked to change was the cost of our kids' school tuition. He pays for their tuition, which he felt was too much and too harsh. But the court stuck with the original payments. As for my ex-husband and ex-best friend, they continued dating. I found out that they had started seeing each other a month into my 3rd pregnancy. They had actually slept together during my 2nd pregnancy but didn't pursue a relationship then because, as they put it, they weren't ready to ruin things and didn't want to hurt anybody. My ex's side have been very supportive of their relationship, even inviting her to holiday gatherings like Thanksgivings or family holidays. Because of this, my kids don't go very often to these events. I don't know, after this whole fiasco I'm coming to the realization that perhaps my ex's side never really liked me all that much. But that's okay. I eventually spoke with my ex-best friend to ask why they did it. She claimed that they were just friends but grew close while she was dealing with issues involving her deadbeat ex-boyfriend. Both of them insisted that my ex-husband just wanted to protect her, which supposedly turned into love. Hearing this hurt me a lot, but at the same time, I felt relieved to know the truth. When I sat with this information for a while, it stopped hurting. It made me realize that I didn't still love my ex-husband and could finally let go of him and their betrayal. They broke up a week ago. Apparently, it's just a break, though who knows. Although my kids go to their dad's house every other weekend, it has helped a lot with making time for myself. Obviously, I'm figuring out who I am without being a wife or mom all the time. In many ways, I find what happened to be a true blessing, which is why I'm no longer angry. As for me, I've been seeing someone. It hasn't been very long, but we get along great. Initially, my ex-husband made the whole situation difficult. He didn't want me to have any man, specifically, around the kids. Edit. I don't know how to update posts, so my apologies if it's wrong. Am I the asshole for canceling my wedding after learning my fiancé only agreed due to family pressure and doesn't want to be a husband or father? My wedding was scheduled for last week, but I ran away the night before, so it never happened. I'm a 26-year-old woman. After 3 years of dating, I was engaged to my 26-year-old boyfriend for 6 months. Together, my now ex-fiancé and I had 2 kids. Twin boys who are 1 year old. My boyfriend was initially quite opposed to me having children, and the pregnancy wasn't planned. I was obstinate, though, and informed him that I would have them whether or not he agreed. I thought I could raise my children on my own, so I offered him the opportunity to leave and didn't even ask for child support. The time seemed appropriate for me, and I've always had a strong mother instinct. I was prepared to become a mother. He initially objected, attempting to convince me to end the pregnancy. I made it plain that I would end our relationship if he persisted in pressing me. It was then that he appeared to change his mind. He was a supportive spouse during the pregnancy and a good parent to our sons when they were born. I'll admit that I might not have been able to handle it alone, and we hadn't anticipated twins. I considered myself fortunate that he stayed. I accepted his proposal 6 months after the birth of our sons. It seemed as though he had never previously objected to the pregnancy. I was ready to forgive and go on because he had been so lovely and encouraging. After 3 years of dating and the birth of our first child, it seemed appropriate to tie the knot. We spent months organizing the wedding, and I was truly delighted. My parents, who really liked my ex-fiancé, were also overjoyed. He appeared to be the ideal man. However, everything fell apart the night before the wedding. I suppose it rescued me from what could have been a terrible marriage, but it's hard to imagine that one phone call could end a 3-year relationship. As is traditional, my ex-fiancé and I were staying apart the day before our wedding. He was at his family's house a few blocks away, and I was at our house. He called me after supper to let me know that he was eager to marry me and that he loved me. His remarks moved me to tears. I waited for him to hang up after we said our goodbyes and enjoyed a sweet moment on the phone. Regretfully, or luckily, maybe, he neglected to end the call. I believe that, contrary to his usual practice, he did not press the screen firmly enough. I chose to listen in on their chat because I was curious and could hear his father's voice, so I stayed on the line. He was recently asked by his father if he had been speaking to me. My ex sounded glum and aloof when he responded to his father. I knew right away that something wasn't right. Even though a week has gone by, the events that followed are constantly replayed in my mind. He replied in the affirmative when his father inquired if he still felt the same as he had 2 days prior. His mother then entered the discussion and advised him to proceed with the wedding regardless of his feelings. My boyfriend appeared to lose his temper a bit and told his parents that they couldn't treat him this way and that he would do whatever he pleased. In response, his father said that although they couldn't make him marry someone he didn't love, they could remove him from their family, therefore it was up to him to decide. Then his mother spoke up, telling him that he had to mature and become responsible now that he was a father. She said that although it was already terrible that he had children before marriage, he could still turn things around by getting married rather than delaying it because he didn't feel ready. She believed that if he was prepared to have children, he was also prepared to commit to marriage. His dad felt the same way she did. My ex started to object, claiming that it was unfair that he was being forced to wed me merely to avoid being kicked out of their relationship. He bemoaned how no one in his life appeared to care if he was prepared for milestones or not, and he accused them of being unjust. He claimed that he always had to deal with situations for which he was unprepared. He complained that his parents, who had made him stay with me in spite of his anxieties about becoming a dad, and I didn't give a damn about whether he was ready to be a father. Even though he still didn't feel ready, they were now pressuring him to be married. He persisted in griping about how unfair he was being treated by everyone. After that, I believe he left his phone in the room and rushed out. When I eventually hung up, his parents were still talking about how careless their son was. I was dumbfounded and unsure of what to do. Only after his parents threatened to divorce him against their will did my boyfriend agree to marry me and live with me. I certainly did not anticipate finding out about this the evening before our wedding. I sat in shock for the next 5 minutes. His actions had not shown that he wasn't prepared. He had always been a good parent and boyfriend, even though we had a fight when I told him I was expecting. I was unaware that these were his actual emotions. There's no denying that he was a brilliant performer. I made the decision to flee as soon as I was able to gather myself. I was lucky to have my children with me. A little out of town, I got into my car and drove to a hotel. By the time I got there, it was late, and my children were being grumpy. Without providing an explanation, I blocked my partner and his family after putting them to sleep. That was it. Knowing that the previous year had been nothing more than a massive lie, I sobbed all night long. Around 4 a.m., I finally dozed off. My ex's parents had paid for the wedding location and all other expenses. I didn't care about the money being spent because they were affluent. After all, they had come up with the entire notion. The 3 of them could handle the fallout. I texted all of my friends and family to let them know that the wedding was off and that I would explain everything tonight before I went to bed. I didn't give any more information. I told everyone not to respond to any messages from my ex or his family, nor should they go near them. I knew my people would follow my instructions without question because I trusted them. I ate my feelings and played with my sons, who were the only people I wanted around me at the time, at the hotel on the day I was meant to get married. Even though I was heartbroken and devastated, I had to put up a brave front for their benefit, and I did just that. I made the decision to return home after taking a day off in order to get my belongings and leave the house. I had already dropped my children off at my parents' house. A day later, I eventually made it to the house, and my ex's reaction was precisely what I had anticipated. I'm still not sure how much of his panicked, worried appearance was real and how much was an act. He appeared to have lost sleep. He said he had been quite concerned about me and asked me where I had been. He went on a tirade about how he and his family had waited for hours on the wedding day without waiting for me to answer. He claimed that I owed them an explanation and a public apology because of what I did, which was unacceptable. Cold feet was no justification, he said, for degrading him and his family in this manner. I said very little. I only informed him that I had just overheard him talking to his folks. For a few seconds, he appeared perplexed, but when he understood what I was talking about, he had the good sense to appear embarrassed. After that, I didn't bother to speak with him or provide any more explanation. He waited outside in the yard while I entered the house. Without saying another word, I gathered my necessities and departed. To be honest, I didn't know what to say to him. I was doing what I believed to be right, and he was doing what he believed to be right. I had lost interest in being a wife. Being a good mother was all I wanted. We hadn't spoken since that nearly a week ago. I believed it to be our demise. I had run out of things to say to him, and he appeared to agree. Or so I believed. He arrived at my parents' house a few hours ago and begged to talk to me. My parents and all of my close friends were aware of what had transpired at this point. Despite my parents' skepticism, I consented to have one final conversation with him. Since the babies had just gone to sleep, I didn't want us fighting or screaming and waking them up, so I didn't let him in. We conversed in the front yard instead. Even though he doesn't feel ready to marry me just yet, he told me he genuinely loves me and apologized for everything he had done to me. He added that he still wants to be a part of our lives and that he loves the children in spite of what he said that evening. I was at a loss for words. Since he had been deceiving me and being phony for about a year, I wasn't sure whether I could trust him again. I was skeptical, of course. Nevertheless, I promised him I would consider my options. He stated that instead of ending things, he wants to try to make things better and give us another chance, free from his parents' meddling. To be honest, I have no idea how to respond to that. Even though I want my children to grow up with their father, I simply cannot trust him at this time. Personally, I could really use a vacation because this week has been really hectic. What if I choose not to give our relationship another chance? That's what I'm left wondering. First update. Hello everyone, I realize it has been a long, but I haven't had time to update you because I've been so busy with work, kids, and moving out. I'm incredibly appreciative of all the love and guidance I've received, and the support has been tremendous. It has been tremendously beneficial throughout this difficult period. Yes, I have discussed custody arrangements with a lawyer. I've made the decision not to reconcile with my ex, thus I want exclusive custody of my children. It was absurd and judgmental of some people to send me harsh texts calling me a selfish mother for even thinking about getting back together with him. In addition to being a mother, I'm a human. Only a week had passed since that phone conversation, and naturally, I still hadn't moved on. After all, it had been a 3-year relationship. I thought about giving him another chance for a moment, but I was emotional because I truly did love him. But today, I feel a lot more stable. I understand that regardless of how I feel about the circumstance, I must prioritize my children and myself. There is no way to get back together with him. All of that hatred and condemnation wasn't necessary in the first place, but I should have anticipated it given that this is the internet. 2 days after calling off the wedding, I began searching for a lawyer. Finding someone I completely trusted and felt at ease with took some time. Because we never imagined this day would arrive, my ex and I had never talked about custody arrangements. I must now take legal action to make sure that no one can take my children away from me. I'm not sure about his parents, but I don't think my ex would even want custody. Given how traditional and conservative they are, I have no doubt that they would be upset if their son were denied custody of their grandchildren. I'm getting ready for any pushback they may give me. My ex and I haven't communicated since our last conversation, which was 3 days ago. This demonstrates to me that his statements about wishing to resolve the conflict were untrue and pointless. He hasn't followed up on me, even though he should have if he really wanted to make things work. I'm certain that not pursuing him again is the right course of action. I won't be with a man who doesn't sincerely want to be with me, and there is no trust left between us. It's great this way. The last thing I need on my plate right now is for him to become upset over the custody arrangement, so I'm going to let him know my decision shortly and hope he doesn't. Second update. Finally, I told my ex that I didn't want to reunite with him and that, just to let him know, I would be requesting full custody. I thought he would be okay with it. He should have been appreciative that I wasn't pressuring him into something for which he wasn't ready because, after all, he acknowledged that he wasn't ready for marriage or children. He didn't, however, take it well. He began to argue with me, claiming that I was unable to harm him in this way. He said that although I could end our relationship if I so desired, I couldn't take his children away from him. Now, if our relationship had been normal, that would have made sense, but it isn't. My ex didn't want children in the first place, as you are fully aware. He wasn't prepared to become a parent until a week ago, but all of a sudden he was battling for custody of the children. I was certain that something was wrong and that his parents were probably still attempting to manipulate him. We were at a restaurant, and I was feeling really ashamed about the commotion he was creating, so I tried to calm him down as he was panicked throughout our argument. He eventually became a little more composed after some time. I couldn't afford a protracted custody dispute, so I made the decision to try to talk sense into his head. I lacked the funds and motivation to do it. Additionally, I was aware that his parents could hire the top attorneys, so even if I had the moral superiority, they might prolong the proceedings. Reasoning with him and hoping he wouldn't argue with me was my best course of action. I informed him that until a week ago, he had been claiming he wasn't prepared for children. I clarified that this was the best course of action for everyone. He could live his life as he pleased, free from the burdens of marriage and children, and I would take care of the children, which was what I wanted anyhow. It seemed like the only sensible course of action because I believed it was what he also wanted. He surprised me by telling me that he had changed his mind and felt prepared to become a father. It simply did not stack up. His declaration that he was prepared just strengthened my thoughts that something more was going on. He couldn't have abruptly changed his mind in a week if he hadn't felt prepared to become a father for a full year. He eventually told me the truth when I asked him if there was anything he wasn't telling me. His parents were responsible. Surprise, surprise. He had gone to his parents after I informed him I knew everything and the wedding was put off. They instructed him to swiftly put me straight. He came up to me a week later for that reason. His parents claimed that although they had come to terms with the fact that I would not wed him because it was now beyond their control, they would not allow him to lose custody of their grandchildren. If he didn't persuade me to accept shared custody, they threatened to cut him off once more. He was virtually pleading with me to accept a joint custody agreement at this time. I simply left because I was so repulsed. It was unbelievable to me that he was dancing to his parents' music once more. I had given him a free pass, but he was still unable to make up his mind. He wanted his parents' money more than he wanted to commit to me or become a father. I didn't want him near our children if that was his only concern. They were worthy of better. I didn't want him in my life or my children's lives in any way, therefore I didn't even want child support. He was obviously lacking in moral character and would stop at nothing to maintain his parents' favor. It was pitiful. I've blocked him everywhere once more in the days that have passed. I don't want to see or speak with him. In his final message to me, he suggested that we agree to share custody and that if his parents died, he would divide his inheritance with me. It's unbelievable that he's actually putting forward this absurdity for no other reason. I suppose this is my punishment for first falling for a pampered brat. I am a self-made lady who has risen through the ranks on my own. Although my parents did fund my education, we didn't have a lot of money. I had to work really hard for what I have now since I had to rely on scholarships to pay for college. My ex is the only son of parents who are very well off. You all know the type, so I doubt I need to elaborate. When he started dating me, I felt he had changed, and he really convinced me that he had. However, I was mistaken. He fooled me for a good 3 years, which proves he's a brilliant actor. I don't want to stay to find out more now that I can finally see him for who he really is. I'm finished. I have no problem raising my children by myself. A parent who doesn't even want to be a father is no better than any other father. I'm positive now that I made the right choice. Instead of turning this into a protracted custody dispute, I just hope he realizes his mistake and revokes his parental rights. I will continue to pray. Third update. Hi everyone, I'm here to finally tell you all some wonderful news. Although I've been quite busy, I realize it's been a while since my last update. First things first, I now live in a much smaller apartment with my babies, but it's mine at least. This house is really mine, unlike the one my ex and I shared. My parents can occasionally visit to help with the kids because it's close to their place. Since I obviously can't stop working, I've also hired a full-time babysitter to help me. I am extremely fortunate to be able to purchase this at this time. I am quite appreciative of my parents' financial support as well. They're trying their hardest, but none of us anticipated this. I consider myself lucky to have parents that are so devoted and encouraging. Now for the section about my ex that I know most people are interested in. He gave up his parental rights by signing. My best assumption is that either his parents gave up or he eventually stood up to them. I'm not sure what changed. I assume it's the former because a friend told me he moved out of their residence. A few days ago, he expressed regret to me and even offered to reimburse me financially. However, I had no intention of accepting money from my former partner. I don't care that some of you may believe that was a bad choice. When I stated that I no longer wanted to interact with him, I wasn't joking. I forgive him, but that doesn't mean I have to pay him back. All I want to do is go on. Without his assistance, my parents and I are more than capable of parenting my children. I responded to his text by telling him everything was okay but requesting that he stop contacting me. He has so far respected that. Giving my children the greatest life possible is my top priority right now. I no longer have the time to be depressed or upset about my ex. The only thing that counts to me is being the greatest mother I can be for my kids.
My jealousy towards my sister was compounded when my boyfriend admitted he finds her prettier than me. Growing up in our family was like living in two different worlds under the same roof. Our house, a modest two-story home on the outskirts of a bustling city, was filled with the sounds of laughter, chatter, and the occasional sibling squabble. My parents, hard-working and loving, always did their best to provide for us. My father, an engineer, spent long hours at the office, while my mother, a nurse, often worked night shifts at the local hospital. Despite their busy schedules, they made time for family dinners, weekend outings, and holidays filled with warmth and joy. My name is Lily, and I am 24 years old. My sister Emma is 2 years older than me. From a young age, it was clear that Emma and I were different in many ways. Emma was the kind of child who turned heads wherever she went. With her tall, slender frame, cascading golden hair and striking blue eyes, she could easily have been a child model. Her beauty was undeniable and magnetic, drawing attention and admiration from everyone she encountered. Even as a toddler, people would stop my mother in the grocery store to comment on how beautiful Emma was. I, on the other hand, was often described as cute. I had a petite build, with curly brown hair that refused to be tamed and wide, hazel eyes. While Emma's beauty was the kind that commanded attention, mine was more subdued, often overlooked in the shadow of her radiance. I didn't mind at first. I loved Emma dearly and took pride in her beauty and charm. Emma was outgoing, confident, and charismatic. She made friends easily and was always the center of attention at school and social gatherings. Her laughter was infectious and her energy seemed boundless. Emma had a natural talent for making people feel special, and she thrived in social situations. I was more introverted and reserved. I enjoyed spending time with a close-knit group of friends and preferred quiet activities like reading, drawing, and exploring the outdoors. While Emma dazzled others with her charm, I found joy in the small, simple moments of life. I was content to observe and listen, often playing the role of the supportive sister who stood in the background, cheering Emma on from the sidelines. Despite our differences, Emma and I shared a close bond during our early childhood years. We would spend hours playing in the backyard, creating imaginary worlds and embarking on grand adventures. Emma was always the leader, inventing elaborate storylines and assigning roles, while I happily followed along, adding my own touches to our fantastical tales. Our parents did their best to treat us equally, showering us with love and support. However, as we grew older, the differences in how people perceived us became more pronounced. At family gatherings, relatives would gush over Emma's beauty, often overlooking me in their admiration. Teachers at school would comment on Emma's potential to become a model or actress, while my achievements in academics and art were noted but not celebrated with the same enthusiasm. One of my earliest memories of feeling overshadowed by Emma's beauty occurred when I was 6 years old. It was Emma's 8th birthday, and our parents had thrown a big party to celebrate. The house was filled with family and friends, laughter and music echoing through the rooms. Emma wore a beautiful pink dress with a matching bow in her hair, looking like a princess from a fairy tale. I wore a simple blue dress, feeling pretty but plain next to Emma's dazzling appearance. As the guests arrived, they flocked to Emma, showering her with compliments and gifts. "You look like a little princess, Emma," they would exclaim. "You're going to break so many hearts when you grow up." Meanwhile, I stood nearby, smiling politely, waiting for someone to notice me. A few guests did, offering kind but brief comments like, "Lily, you look cute too." But the focus was always on Emma. I remember feeling a pang of jealousy that day, a confusing and unwelcome emotion that I didn't fully understand at the time. I loved Emma and wanted her to be happy, but I couldn't help but feel invisible in her shadow. It was a feeling that would follow me throughout my childhood and into my teenage years, growing stronger with each passing year. Family outings were another reminder of the differences in how we were perceived. Whether we were at the park, the zoo, or on a beach vacation, Emma always drew admiring glances and comments from strangers. "What a beautiful child," they would say to my parents. "She should be in movies." My parents would smile proudly and thank them, while I stood quietly by their side, wishing for a fraction of the attention Emma received. The first day of elementary school was a milestone for both Emma and me. Emma, with her natural charisma and stunning looks, was immediately popular. She made friends effortlessly, her laughter and charm drawing others to her like a magnet. I admired her ability to connect with people and often found myself standing quietly by her side, watching as she navigated the social landscape with ease. Emma's popularity grew quickly. She was invited to every birthday party, chosen first for group activities, and always had someone to sit with at lunch. I, on the other hand, struggled to fit in. Making friends didn't come naturally to me. I was shy, preferring the company of a good book to the noise of the playground. While Emma thrived in the social environment of school, I often felt like an outsider looking in. In the classroom, the differences between us were equally apparent. Teachers adored Emma. They praised her participation, her enthusiasm, and her ability to brighten the room with her presence. "Emma, you're such a delight," they would say. "Your smile just lights up the classroom." I couldn't help but notice that their praise for me was more subdued. "Lily, you did well on your spelling test," they would say, their tone lacking the same warmth and excitement. As the school year progressed, several significant events highlighted the growing gap between Emma and me. One such event was the annual school talent show. Emma decided to perform a dance routine, and she practiced diligently every day after school. Our parents were thrilled and supportive, attending every practice session and offering words of encouragement. When the night of the talent show arrived, the auditorium was packed with students, parents, and teachers. Emma took the stage in a sparkling costume, her confidence radiating through the room. She performed flawlessly, her movements graceful and captivating. The audience erupted in applause, and I felt a surge of pride for my sister. But as the cheers grew louder, so did the pang of jealousy in my heart. Later that evening, as we gathered in the school gymnasium for refreshments, Emma was surrounded by admirers. "Emma, you were amazing. You should be a professional dancer." The compliments flowed freely, and I watched from the sidelines, feeling small and insignificant. No one seemed to notice my presence, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being overshadowed. One particular family gathering stands out in my memory. It was Thanksgiving, and our house was filled with the delicious aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie. Relatives had traveled from near and far to join us, and the dining room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Emma, dressed in a stylish outfit that accentuated her beauty, was the center of attention as usual. As we gathered around the dinner table, our Aunt Margaret turned to Emma and said, "Emma, darling, you're looking more stunning than ever. You should be on the cover of a magazine." Everyone nodded in agreement, their eyes fixed on Emma. I felt a familiar knot tighten in my stomach. "And Lily, how are you doing in school?" Aunt Margaret added, almost as an afterthought. I forced a smile and replied, "I'm doing well, thank you." But the words felt hollow, and the conversation quickly shifted back to Emma. As the evening wore on, I found myself retreating to a quiet corner, unable to shake the growing sense of jealousy and inadequacy. The school year was filled with events where Emma shone brightly, further highlighting the differences between us. One such event was the school's Spring Fling, a day of fun activities, games, and performances. Emma was chosen to be the lead in the school play, a fairy tale princess who saved the day with her bravery and beauty. She rehearsed her lines with enthusiasm, and our parents couldn't have been prouder. On the day of the Spring Fling, the entire school gathered in the auditorium to watch the play. Emma's performance was, as expected, flawless. She captivated the audience with her charm and grace, earning a standing ovation. I watched from the audience, clapping along with everyone else, but inside, I felt a mix of pride and resentment. After the play, there were games and activities on the school lawn. Emma was surrounded by friends, all eager to be seen with the school's star. I wandered the grounds, feeling out of place and disconnected. I wanted to join in the fun, but my shyness held me back. As I watched Emma laughing and playing with her friends, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever feel as confident and accepted as she did. The first feelings of jealousy and resentment began to take root during these formative years. I loved Emma deeply, but I couldn't ignore the constant comparisons and the favoritism that seemed to follow her everywhere. It wasn't just the teachers and family members who favored her, it was everyone. Even our peers seemed to gravitate towards her, leaving me feeling like an afterthought. One Christmas, our family gathered at our grandparents' house. The living room was filled with twinkling lights, and the scent of freshly baked cookies filled the air. As we exchanged gifts, our relatives couldn't help but comment on Emma's appearance. "Emma, you're growing more beautiful every year. You look like a movie star." I received kind but less enthusiastic comments. "Lily, you're looking nice today," they would say, their eyes already drifting back to Emma. That night, as we lay in our shared bedroom at our grandparents' house, I confided in Emma about how I was feeling. "Emma, do you ever get tired of all the attention?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma sighed and turned to face me. "Sometimes, Lily. It can be overwhelming. But I'm grateful for it too. You know, you have so many amazing qualities that people notice too. You're smart, creative, and kind. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." I appreciated Emma's words, but they didn't fully alleviate my feelings of jealousy and inadequacy. It was hard to feel confident when I was constantly being compared to someone who seemed to have it all. As we progressed through elementary school, there were more events and activities that highlighted the differences between Emma and me. One such event was the annual science fair. Emma and I both participated, and while I worked diligently on my project about the solar system, Emma chose a project about butterflies that showcased her artistic talents. On the day of the science fair, the gymnasium was filled with colorful displays and eager students. Emma's project was beautifully presented, with intricate drawings of butterflies and a detailed explanation of their life cycle. My project, though well-researched, paled in comparison to the visual appeal of Emma's display. When the judges announced the winners, Emma received first place in the artistic category. I received an honorable mention for my research, but it felt like a consolation prize. Our parents were proud of both of us, but the excitement around Emma's win was palpable. "Emma, you did such an amazing job, we're so proud of you," they exclaimed, while my achievement was acknowledged with a simple, "Good job, Lily." I tried to hide my disappointment, but it was difficult. The constant comparisons and the feeling of being overshadowed were taking a toll on my self-esteem. I loved Emma and wanted to be happy for her, but I couldn't ignore the growing sense of resentment and inadequacy. One summer, our family went on a vacation to a lakeside cabin. It was a beautiful, serene place, surrounded by trees and with a clear blue lake perfect for swimming and boating. Emma and I spent our days exploring the woods, swimming in the lake, and roasting marshmallows by the campfire. One afternoon, as we were swimming, a group of kids from a neighboring cabin joined us. Emma, with her outgoing personality, quickly made friends with them. They were captivated by her beauty and charm, and soon they were playing games and splashing around together. I tried to join in, but I felt like an outsider. The kids seemed more interested in Emma, and I found myself drifting to the edge of the group, watching from a distance. That evening, as we sat by the campfire, I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. Emma had a way of making friends effortlessly, while I struggled to fit in. It was a feeling that I was becoming all too familiar with, and I didn't know how to deal with it. As we moved through elementary school, the differences between Emma and me continued to shape our experiences. Emma's popularity and ease in making friends stood in stark contrast to my struggles. I found solace in my studies and hobbies, but the social dynamics of school were a constant challenge. One day, during recess, a group of girls invited Emma to join their game of hopscotch. I stood nearby, hoping to be included, but they didn't seem to notice me. Emma, always the kind sister, turned to me and said, "Lily, come play with us." The girls exchanged glances but didn't protest, so I joined in. As we played, it became clear that the girls were more interested in Emma. They complimented her on her hopscotch skills, giggled at her jokes, and vied for her attention. I felt like a background character in my own life, struggling to find my place in a world that seemed to revolve around my sister. By the time we reached 5th grade, the divide between Emma and me had grown wider. Emma was elected class president, a role that suited her outgoing personality and leadership skills. She thrived in the spotlight, organizing events, leading discussions, and earning the admiration of teachers and students alike. I continued to excel in academics, often earning top grades and praise from my teachers. But the recognition I received felt different from the adoration showered on Emma. My achievements were acknowledged with polite applause, while Emma's accomplishments were celebrated with enthusiasm and fanfare. One spring, our school held a field day, a day filled with various athletic events and competitions. Emma, with her natural athleticism and competitive spirit, signed up for multiple events and excelled in each one. She won first place in the relay race, the long jump, and the obstacle course. The crowd cheered her on, and she was awarded a trophy for her outstanding performance. I participated in a few events, but my results were modest in comparison. I placed third in the three-legged race and received a participation ribbon for the tug-of-war. Our parents congratulated me on my efforts, but their excitement was clearly focused on Emma's achievements. As we walked home that afternoon, Emma carried her trophy with pride, while I clutched my participation ribbon, feeling a mix of pride and frustration. I was happy for Emma, but I couldn't help but feel overshadowed once again. The constant comparisons and the feeling of being in her shadow were taking a toll on my self-esteem, and I didn't know how to break free from the cycle. Despite the challenges and the constant comparisons, there were moments of hope and encouragement. One such moment came from an unlikely source: our art teacher, Mrs. Thompson. She was a kind and perceptive woman who had a talent for seeing the potential in her students. One day after class, Mrs. Thompson asked me to stay behind. "Lily, I've noticed that you have a real talent for drawing," she said, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "Your attention to detail and your ability to capture emotion in your work are truly impressive." I blushed, not used to receiving such direct praise. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson," I replied, feeling a spark of pride. "I think you should consider entering your artwork in the school's art contest," she continued. "You have a gift, and I believe it's worth sharing with others." Encouraged by her words, I decided to take a chance. I spent hours in my room, working on a piece that I hoped would capture the judge's attention. It was a portrait of a girl standing in a field of wildflowers, her expression a mix of wonder and melancholy. I poured my heart into the drawing, determined to create something that would make me proud. When the day of the art contest arrived, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The school gymnasium was filled with colorful displays, each piece a testament to the talent and creativity of the students. Emma accompanied me, her supportive presence a comfort in the sea of competition. As the judges made their rounds, I watched nervously, hoping that my work would stand out. When the results were announced, I was thrilled to hear my name called for first place in the drawing category. The applause was loud and genuine, and for the first time, I felt like I had truly earned my moment in the spotlight. Emma hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with pride. "I knew you could do it, Lily," she exclaimed. "You're amazing." However, when I came home and wanted to show off my achievement to my parents, I walked into the living room and saw Emma already basking in their praise. She had just returned from a photo shoot for a local magazine, and our parents were beaming with pride as she described the experience in animated detail. "And then the photographer said I had the perfect look for their cover," Emma exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. My parents' faces lit up with admiration. "That's amazing, Emma. We're so proud of you," my mother said, giving her a tight hug. My heart sank as I watched the scene unfold. Clutching my certificate and ribbon, I felt my earlier excitement deflate. I wanted to share my success, to feel the same pride and joy from my parents, but the timing seemed all wrong. Not wanting to interrupt Emma's moment, I quietly slipped into my room and gently placed the certificate and ribbon in a drawer. Sitting on my bed, I stared at the drawer, feeling a mix of disappointment and frustration. It wasn't that I begrudged Emma her achievements. I just wished that, for once, I could have a moment where I felt truly seen and celebrated. Later that evening, as I sat at the dinner table, my parents continued to talk about Emma's photo shoot. I listened silently, trying to push away the feelings of resentment that were bubbling up inside me. When there was finally a lull in the conversation, I mustered the courage to speak up. "Mom, Dad, I won first place in the art contest today," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. They turned to look at me, their expressions shifting from excitement to polite interest. "That's wonderful, Lily," my father said with a smile. "Congratulations." "Yes, we're very proud of you, sweetheart," my mother added. But their enthusiasm didn't match the excitement they had shown for Emma's news. The conversation quickly shifted back to Emma's photo shoot, leaving me feeling once again overshadowed. As I cleared the dinner table that night, I thought about Mrs. Thompson's encouraging words and the applause I had received at the art contest. Despite my parents' subdued reaction, I reminded myself that my achievement was important and valuable. I had worked hard and earned my success, and I needed to hold on to that sense of pride, even if it wasn't fully recognized at home. In the quiet of my room, I took out the certificate and ribbon again, placing them on my desk where I could see them. They were a reminder of my talent and my potential, a beacon of hope in the midst of my struggle to find my place in a world that often seemed to favor my sister. As I lay in bed that night, I vowed to keep pursuing my passions and to celebrate my own victories, no matter how small they might seem to others. Middle school was a time of significant change for both Emma and me. As we transitioned from childhood to adolescence, the differences between us became even more pronounced. Puberty brought with it a host of physical and emotional changes, and Emma's beauty seemed to blossom overnight. She grew taller, her figure became more defined, and her golden hair and striking blue eyes only became more captivating. It was as if she had stepped out of a magazine, effortlessly embodying the ideal of beauty. With her blossoming beauty came increased attention from boys. Emma was constantly surrounded by admirers, her locker decorated with love notes and flowers. She received invitations to dances, parties, and other social events, becoming a fixture in the middle school social scene. It was clear that Emma enjoyed the attention, and she navigated these new social dynamics with the same ease and charm that had always defined her. I, on the other hand, experienced puberty in a more subdued way. My growth spurt was less dramatic, and my appearance remained relatively unchanged. My curly brown hair and hazel eyes were considered cute, rather than stunning, and I was often overlooked in favor of my sister's striking beauty. I was quieter, more reserved, and focused on my academics and hobbies. While Emma thrived in the social spotlight, I found solace in my studies and my artwork. As Emma's popularity grew, so did her involvement in modeling and beauty pageants. She was scouted by a local modeling agency and began participating in photo shoots and competitions. Our parents were thrilled and supportive, attending every event and cheering her on from the sidelines. Emma's room quickly filled with trophies, sashes, and framed photos from her modeling gigs. She was becoming a local celebrity, and our parents couldn't have been prouder. As high school came to an end, Emma and I found ourselves at a crossroads. Emma had decided to fully pursue her modeling and acting career, a path that had always seemed destined for her. With her undeniable beauty and charisma, she had already made significant strides in the industry. Offers from modeling agencies and casting directors came pouring in, and soon, she was traveling across the country for various gigs and auditions. Our parents were immensely proud of her achievements and supported her every step of the way. I, on the other hand, had chosen a different path. My passion for art and literature had only grown stronger over the years, and I decided to attend a liberal arts college that offered excellent programs in both fields. While Emma's world was filled with glitz and glamour, mine was more subdued but equally fulfilling. I looked forward to immersing myself in my studies, exploring new ideas, and honing my creative skills. The first day of college was a mix of excitement and nervousness. The campus was buzzing with energy as students moved into their dorms and attended orientation events. I felt a sense of independence and freedom that I hadn't experienced before. My dorm room was small but cozy, decorated with posters of famous paintings and stacks of books. It was my own little sanctuary where I could escape into my world of creativity. College life was a transformative experience for me. I quickly immersed myself in my classes, eager to learn and grow. The professors were passionate and knowledgeable, and I found myself inspired by their teachings. My art classes allowed me to experiment with different mediums and techniques, while my literature courses opened my mind to new perspectives and ideas. I also developed close friendships with my fellow students. We bonded over late-night study sessions, shared interests, and the ups and downs of college life. My roommate Sarah was a kind and supportive friend who shared my love for art. We often spent hours in the art studio, working on our projects and discussing our dreams and aspirations. One of the most significant aspects of my college experience was meeting Mark. We met during our sophomore year in a creative writing class. Mark was an English major with a passion for poetry and storytelling. He had a quiet, introspective demeanor that drew me in, and we quickly became friends. Our friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship, and soon, we were inseparable. Mark was a constant source of support and encouragement. He appreciated my artistic talents and often attended my gallery showings and readings. We spent countless hours discussing literature, art, and our future aspirations. Mark's gentle nature and thoughtful insights helped me gain confidence in myself and my abilities. Our relationship continued to grow, and I found myself falling deeply in love with him. Mark's presence in my life was a calming influence, and he helped me navigate the challenges of college with grace and resilience. With him by my side, I felt more confident and capable than ever before. While my college years were filled with personal growth and new experiences, my relationship with Emma became more strained. Her modeling and acting career had taken off, and she was living a glamorous life that seemed worlds apart from mine. Emma's success brought her fame and recognition, and she often appeared in magazines and on television. She attended red carpet events, mingled with celebrities, and traveled to exotic locations for photo shoots. Despite our different paths, Emma and I stayed in touch. She would occasionally visit me at college, bringing with her a whirlwind of excitement and glamour. During her visits, she would regale me with stories of her adventures, describing the luxurious parties, the famous people she had met, and the exciting projects she was working on. While I was genuinely happy for her, these visits also brought up old insecurities for me. One particular visit stands out in my memory. Emma had just returned from a photo shoot in Paris, and she decided to surprise me with a visit. She arrived on campus in a sleek car, dressed in designer clothes and carrying a suitcase full of gifts. As we walked through the campus, students turned their heads to look at her, captivated by her beauty and presence. "Paris was incredible, Lily," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The Eiffel Tower, the fashion shows, the food, everything was just perfect. And guess what? I met a famous director who wants to cast me in his next film." "That's amazing, Emma," I replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. "I'm really happy for you." As we continued our walk, Emma's stories of her glamorous life filled the air. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy and inadequacy. While Emma was living a life of excitement and adventure, I was focused on my studies and navigating the challenges of college. It was hard not to compare our lives and feel like I was falling short. That evening, as we sat in my dorm room, Emma noticed the stack of books and art supplies on my desk. "You always were the creative one, Lily," she said with a smile. "I wish I had your talent for art." I appreciated her compliment, but it didn't fully alleviate my feelings of insecurity. Despite my achievements and the personal growth I had experienced in college, I still struggled with the constant comparisons to Emma. It was a lingering shadow that I couldn't quite escape. As the years went by, I continued to focus on my studies and my relationship with Mark. I knew that I needed to find my own identity and create a life that was true to myself. College was an opportunity for me to explore my passions and develop my skills, and I was determined to make the most of it. One of the most rewarding experiences of my college years was participating in a study abroad program. I spent a semester in Italy, immersing myself in the rich culture and history of the country. The experience was transformative, allowing me to gain new perspectives and deepen my understanding of art and literature. I visited famous museums, studied the works of Renaissance masters, and filled my sketchbook with drawings of the beautiful landscapes and architecture. Italy also provided a sense of independence and self-discovery. Away from the familiar environment of home and college, I had the opportunity to reflect on my life and my aspirations. I realized that I didn't need to compare myself to Emma or anyone else. My worth wasn't defined by external validation or recognition, but by my own efforts and passions. When I returned from Italy, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. I threw myself into my final year of college, determined to make the most of my remaining time. I completed my senior thesis, a collection of paintings and essays that explored the intersection of art and literature. The project was a culmination of my years of study and personal growth, and it received high praise from my professors. As graduation approached, Emma decided to visit me once again. She had just finished filming her first major movie and was excited to share the news with me. Her arrival brought a mix of emotions, happiness to see my sister, but also a sense of dread about the inevitable comparisons. Emma arrived on campus with her usual flair, instantly attracting attention wherever she went. Her presence was magnetic, drawing eyes and admiration as she moved through the crowd with grace and confidence. We spent the day catching up, and she shared vibrant stories of her experiences on set, the interesting people she had met, and the exciting opportunities that lay ahead. I listened intently, a mix of admiration and envy swirling within me, struggling to reconcile my complex feelings. That evening, we attended a small gathering with some of my friends. The atmosphere was lively, filled with chatter and laughter. As we mingled, I couldn't help but notice the way people gravitated towards Emma, captivated by her effortless charm and stunning beauty. She seemed to shine even brighter in social settings, her laughter infectious and her stories enthralling everyone around her. Despite the twinge of jealousy I found comfort in having Mark by my side. His presence grounded me, offering a reassuring contrast to Emma's dazzling allure. As the night wore on, I appreciated Mark's steady support, his quiet strength providing a sense of stability amidst the whirlwind of Emma's charisma. From the moment I met Mark, our relationship felt like something out of a beautifully written novel. We met during our sophomore year in a creative writing class, and it didn't take long for me to be drawn to his quiet, introspective nature. Mark had a passion for poetry and storytelling, and his gentle demeanor and thoughtful insights quickly captured my heart. Our friendship began with long conversations after class. We would sit in the campus cafe sipping on coffee and discussing our favorite books, authors, and the themes that resonated most with us. Mark's love for poetry was evident in the way he spoke, his words carefully chosen and imbued with a depth of meaning. I found myself looking forward to these moments, cherishing the time we spent together. One crisp autumn afternoon, Mark invited me to a poetry reading at a local bookstore. The intimate setting, with its dim lighting and the faint scent of old books, created a cozy atmosphere. As we listened to the poets recite their works, I felt a sense of connection and understanding with Mark that I had never experienced before. After the reading, we walked through the city streets, the leaves crunching under our feet, and talked about our dreams and aspirations. It was during this walk that Mark shyly admitted his feelings for me, and I realized that I felt the same way. Our relationship blossomed from there. Mark's presence in my life was a calming influence, and he helped me navigate the challenges of college with grace and resilience. We spent countless hours together, studying, attending art exhibits, and exploring the city. Mark's support and encouragement were unwavering, and he often attended my gallery showings and readings, always the first to offer a kind word or a thoughtful critique. One of my favorite memories from those early days was a spontaneous road trip we took during spring break. We decided to visit a small coastal town known for its picturesque beaches and vibrant art scene. The drive was filled with laughter and music, as we sang along to our favorite songs and shared stories from our childhoods. When we arrived, we spent our days wandering through art galleries, collecting seashells on the beach, and watching the sunset over the ocean. In the evenings, we would sit on the balcony of our little beach cottage, wrapped in blankets, and talk for hours under the stars. It was during this trip that I realized just how deeply I had fallen in love with Mark. Mark had a way of making me feel truly seen and appreciated. He valued my creativity and intelligence, and he often reminded me of my worth, especially during moments of self-doubt. His love was a steady, unwavering force that gave me the confidence to pursue my passions and believe in myself. With him by my side, I felt empowered to take risks and embrace new opportunities. Our relationship wasn't without its challenges, of course. There were times when the pressures of school and our individual ambitions created tension, but we always managed to find our way back to each other. Communication was key, and Mark's patient, understanding nature made it easier for us to navigate any obstacles that came our way. We learned to support each other's dreams and celebrate each other's successes, knowing that our love was strong enough to withstand any difficulties. One particularly challenging period came during our senior year, when I was working on my senior thesis, a collection of paintings and essays exploring the intersection of art and literature. The project was incredibly demanding, and there were times when I felt overwhelmed and unsure of myself. Mark was my rock during this time, offering a listening ear, words of encouragement, and practical support. He would bring me coffee during late-night work sessions, help me organize my thoughts, and remind me to take breaks and care for myself. His unwavering belief in me gave me the strength to persevere and complete the project. As I graduated, Mark and I began to discuss our future together. We knew that the transition from college to the real world would bring new challenges, but we were committed to facing them together. Mark had been accepted into a prestigious graduate program for creative writing, and I had been offered a position as an art instructor at a local community center. We were excited about the opportunities ahead, and the chance to continue growing both individually and as a couple. Our love deepened as we navigated the post-college world. We moved into a small apartment together, filling it with books, art supplies, and the memories we had collected over the years. We continued to support each other's passions. Mark attended my art exhibits, and I went to his poetry readings. Our shared love for creativity and storytelling was a constant source of inspiration and connection. One of the most memorable moments of our post-college life was a surprise trip that Mark planned for our anniversary. He had arranged for us to visit a secluded cabin in the mountains, a place where we could escape the hustle and bustle of city life and reconnect with nature. The cabin was nestled in a lush forest, with a clear, babbling brook nearby and a stunning view of the mountains. We spent our days hiking through the woods, exploring hidden trails, and marveling at the beauty of the natural world. In the evenings, we would sit by the fireplace, sipping hot cocoa and sharing our hopes and dreams for the future. It was during this trip that Mark proposed, presenting me with a simple, elegant ring that he had designed himself. His proposal was heartfelt and sincere, a reflection of the deep love and commitment we shared. I joyfully accepted, and we spent the rest of the evening celebrating our engagement under the stars. Our journey towards self-acceptance and confidence in our careers continued to evolve. I found immense fulfillment in my role as an art instructor, helping students discover their own creative potential. Mark's graduate program challenged him to refine his craft, and he began to gain recognition for his poetry. We faced new challenges and uncertainties, but our love remained a constant, guiding us through every twist and turn. My journey towards self-acceptance and confidence in my career was deeply intertwined with my relationship with Mark. His unwavering support and belief in me were instrumental in helping me overcome the insecurities that had plagued me for so long. One of the most significant steps in my journey was the decision to pursue a master's degree in art therapy. Combining my love for art with a desire to help others, I found a sense of purpose and fulfillment that was profoundly rewarding. The program was rigorous, but it allowed me to explore new dimensions of my creativity and develop a deeper understanding of the therapeutic power of art. Throughout my studies, Mark was my biggest cheerleader. He celebrated my successes and provided comfort during moments of doubt. His encouragement gave me the confidence to push myself and take risks, knowing that he believed in my abilities even when I struggled to believe in myself. My first internship as an art therapist was both challenging and transformative. I worked with a diverse group of clients, each with their own unique stories and struggles. Through my work, I witnessed the incredible impact that art could have on individuals' emotional and mental well-being. It was a humbling and inspiring experience that reinforced my commitment to this field. One particularly memorable client was a young girl named Mia, who had experienced significant trauma and struggled with severe anxiety. Through our sessions, Mia began to express her feelings and experiences through her artwork. Watching her transformation and growth was deeply moving, and it affirmed my belief in the power of art therapy. Mia's progress also mirrored my own journey toward self-acceptance, as I learned to trust in my skills and embrace my role as a therapist. My confidence continued to grow as I completed my degree and began working as a full-time art therapist. I developed strong relationships with my clients and colleagues, and I found immense satisfaction in helping others heal and find their own paths to self-acceptance. My work was challenging, but it was also incredibly rewarding, and I felt a deep sense of fulfillment in my career. Throughout this journey, Mark remained a steadfast presence in my life. We continued to support each other's dreams and aspirations, celebrating our individual successes and navigating challenges together. Our relationship was built on a foundation of love, trust, and mutual respect, and it only grew stronger with time. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that my path to self-acceptance and confidence was not just about achieving external success. It was about embracing my unique talents and passions, believing in my worth, and finding joy in the process. With Mark's love and support, I had learned to see myself through a lens of compassion and self-respect, and it was a lesson that would stay with me for the rest of my life. The days of love between Mark and me were a beautiful tapestry of shared experiences, challenges, and triumphs. Our relationship was a source of strength and inspiration, guiding us through the complexities of life and helping us grow both individually and as a couple. As I looked towards the future, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the love we shared and the journey we had embarked on together. With Mark by my side, I knew that I could face any challenge and continue to pursue my dreams with confidence and resilience. The day of the outing with Mark and his friends had arrived, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was a significant moment for us, as we planned to reveal the exciting news of our upcoming marriage to his close-knit group. Mark had organized a small gathering at a charming lakeside cabin, a picturesque location perfect for such an announcement. The cabin was nestled among tall pine trees, with a serene view of the lake that shimmered under the late afternoon sun. As we drove to the cabin, Mark and I chatted about the details of our wedding plans, our excitement palpable. He reached over and squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with love and anticipation. "This is going to be great, Lily. They're going to be so happy for us," he said reassuringly. When we arrived, we were greeted by the warm smiles and friendly banter of Mark's friends. It was my first time meeting most of them, and I was eager to make a good impression. We settled into the cozy living area, which was decorated with rustic furniture and adorned with fairy lights that added a magical touch to the evening. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere grew livelier. We enjoyed a delicious dinner, prepared by Mark's friend Alex, who was an excellent cook. The table was filled with an array of dishes, from grilled vegetables to succulent steaks, and the conversation flowed easily. There was a sense of camaraderie and warmth that made me feel welcome, despite my initial nerves. After dinner, we moved to the spacious deck overlooking the lake. The sun had begun to set, casting a golden glow over the water. Mark and I exchanged a glance, knowing it was the perfect moment to share our news. He stood up, drawing everyone's attention. "Hey everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" Mark began, his voice filled with excitement. "Lily and I have some news we'd like to share with you all." The group quieted down, all eyes on us. I felt a rush of anticipation as Mark continued. "We're getting married," he announced, his face lighting up with joy. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a chorus of cheers and applause. His friends rushed to congratulate us, and I felt a warm sense of acceptance and happiness. We toasted to our future, clinking glasses of champagne and exchanging hugs. As the celebration continued, everyone settled back into their seats, drinks in hand. The conversation turned to lighter topics, and we began to share stories and laugh. At some point, the topic of siblings came up, and one of Mark's friends, Jenna, asked me about my family. "So Lily, do you have any siblings?" she inquired, her tone genuinely curious. "Yes, I have an older sister Emma," I replied smiling. "She's a model and actress." The mention of Emma seemed to pique everyone's interest. "Wow, a model and actress. That's impressive," Jenna remarked. It was at this moment that Mark, who had been enjoying a few drinks, chimed in loudly. "If you guys think Lily is pretty, you should see her sister," he exclaimed, a broad grin on his face. He then pulled out his phone and began scrolling through Emma's Instagram, showing photos to everyone at the table. The reaction was immediate and predictable. They were all in awe, commenting on how stunning she looked. "She's gorgeous. Wow, she could be a supermodel. No wonder she's in the industry." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, my heart sinking. The evening, which had started so beautifully, now felt tainted. Mark's comment and the subsequent admiration for Emma's photos made me feel small and insignificant. I forced a smile, trying to hide my discomfort, but inside, I was reeling. As the night continued, I couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation that washed over me. Mark's words echoed in my mind, A harsh reminder of the insecurities I had battled for so long. The constant comparisons to Emma, the feeling of being overshadowed. It all came rushing back in that moment. I tried to engage in the conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I felt a growing sense of resentment and hurt. It wasn't just about the comment itself, but the realization that even my own boyfriend seemed to find Emma more attractive than me. It was a painful confirmation of my deepest fears. Mark, seemingly oblivious to my distress, continued to laugh and chat with his friends. I watched him, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. How could he not see how much his comment had hurt me? How could he not understand the weight of his words? Eventually, I excused myself and went inside, needing a moment to collect my thoughts. I stood in the kitchen, staring out the window at the darkening lake, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. The evening, which was supposed to be a joyous celebration, had turned into a painful reminder of my insecurities and the constant comparisons I couldn't escape. When the gathering finally wound down and Mark and I headed to bed, the silence between us was heavy. As we lay in the darkness, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling. "Why did you say that about Emma tonight?" He turned to face me, confusion written across his face. "What do you mean?" "You said if everyone thinks I'm pretty they should see my sister," I explained, my voice breaking. "Then you showed them her photos. Do you have any idea how that made me feel?" Realization dawned on his face, and he reached out to take my hand. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it like that." "But that's how it felt," I said, pulling my hand away. "It felt like you were saying she's more beautiful than me, like I'm not enough. And in front of all your friends. It was humiliating." Mark's expression softened, and he looked genuinely remorseful. "I didn't think about it that way. I was just trying to show them how amazing your family is. I'm really sorry, Lily. You know I love you and think you're beautiful." His words, though sincere, did little to ease the pain. The damage had been done, and I couldn't simply brush it off. "It's not just about tonight," I said quietly. "It's about always being compared to Emma. I thought you understood how hard that is for me." "I do understand," Mark insisted. "I was just being stupid and careless. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to hurt you." I wanted to believe him, to let go of the hurt and move on, but the comment had struck a deep nerve. It wasn't something I could easily forget. "I need some time," I said finally. "I need to process this." Mark nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "Take all the time you need, Lily. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." The days following the outing were difficult. The comment replayed in my mind, a constant reminder of my insecurities. I found myself avoiding social media, not wanting to see Emma's photos and the flood of admiration they always garnered. I distanced myself from Mark, needing space to sort through my feelings. Mark tried to make amends in various ways, leaving me sweet notes, planning thoughtful gestures, and repeatedly apologizing. While I appreciated his efforts, the wound was still fresh, and I struggled to move past it. I confided in my close friends, seeking their perspective and support. They were understanding and empathetic, reassuring me of my worth and beauty. "Lily, you're an incredible person," Sarah, my best friend, said one afternoon over coffee. "Mark loves you for who you are. He made a mistake, but that doesn't change how amazing you are." Their words were comforting, but the internal struggle remained. I can't escape the constant comparisons to her, and I don't think I ever will. It's exhausting. How do I overcome these insecurities? Additionally, as I reflected on my journey and the experiences that had shaped my relationship with Mark, I found myself drawn to the comments and perspectives shared by others who had heard my story. These insights, coming from an external point of view, provided a fresh lens through which I could see my situation more clearly. It was as if they were holding up a mirror, allowing me to confront the realities I had been avoiding. Here are some of those reflections. One commenter noted, 36 is too old for that kind of foot-and-mouth syndrome with a partner, even if alcohol is involved. Not only is he too old to not know better, but it's not even a foot-and-mouth situation. He didn't just casually acknowledge that OP's sister was beautiful, he basically insulted his girlfriend and proceeded to show off her sister to his friends for their approval. If this is the way he acts in front of his girlfriend, one can only imagine what he acts like behind her back. This comment hit me hard. It underscored the gravity of Mark's actions and made me realize that his behavior was not just a careless mistake. It was a deeper issue of respect and understanding. At his age, Mark should have known better than to make such a hurtful comment, especially in a public setting. Another commenter wrote, "Now you know that even if he didn't mean it like that, he certainly meant it enough to publicly show off your sister to impress his friends. Imagine what the future will be like with this guy. Hey everybody, come check out this gorgeous woman I know. No, not my wife, her sister." He actually pulled out his phone to show off another woman at a meeting where he was introducing his girlfriend. This one isn't the one, OP. I can assure you the right one around the corner will be mortified when you tell him this story. This perspective made me envision a future filled with similar humiliations. The idea that Mark would prioritize impressing his friends over respecting my feelings was a sobering thought. It made me question whether I wanted to spend my life with someone who might continue to undermine my self-esteem. A third commenter shared their personal experience. Leave him. I have a beautiful sister also. She is stunning, and I am not. I am cute also. But my husband finds me beautiful and doesn't see the beauty of my sister. He has never compared me to her and never stared at her. He honestly doesn't get the hype of her. But tells me constantly how beautiful I am. You need to find a man like that. There is someone out there who will find you more beautiful than your sister. But it isn't the one you're with now. Leave him and find someone better. This heartfelt advice resonated deeply with me. It gave me hope that there was someone out there who would truly appreciate me for who I am, without making hurtful comparisons. The idea of being with someone who saw my unique beauty and valued me above all others was incredibly comforting. These comments and reflections were eye-opening. They forced me to confront some difficult truths about my relationship with Mark. While his efforts to apologize and make amends were sincere, the underlying issues of respect and understanding remained unresolved. It became clear that I needed to reevaluate what I wanted and deserved in a relationship. The story narrates a journey fraught with insecurities, emotional turmoil, and ultimately, self-discovery. At its core lies a poignant lesson about the importance of self-acceptance and recognizing one's intrinsic worth. The protagonist, Lily, grapples with a lifetime of comparison to her stunning sister Emma. From childhood to adulthood, she feels overshadowed by Emma's beauty, leading to deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. However, as the story unfolds, Lily embarks on a journey of self-exploration and growth, guided by the support of her friends and the insights gained through therapy. Central to the narrative is the impact of external validation on one's sense of self-worth. Lily's experiences with Mark, her boyfriend, highlight the profound effect that thoughtless comments can have on a person's confidence. Mark's ill-considered remark about Emma during a social outing triggers a cascade of emotions in Lily, underscoring the fragility of her self-esteem. The incident serves as a catalyst for reflection, prompting Lily to confront her insecurities and reevaluate her relationship with Mark. Through Lily's journey, the story underscores the importance of mutual respect and empathy in relationships. Mark's failure to consider the implications of his words demonstrates a lack of sensitivity and understanding towards Lily's feelings. This serves as a poignant reminder that respect is not just about avoiding deliberate acts of harm, but also about acknowledging and honoring a partner's vulnerabilities. Lily's decision to address the issue directly with Mark underscores the significance of open communication in fostering healthy relationships. Moreover, the story highlights the transformative power of self-awareness and personal growth. Lily's journey towards self-acceptance is not without its challenges, but it is through confronting her insecurities head-on that she begins to reclaim her sense of self-worth. With the support of her friends, Lily learns to embrace her individuality and celebrate her unique qualities. The narrative also underscores the importance of surrounding oneself with a supportive network of friends and loved ones. Lily's friends serve as a source of strength and encouragement, offering empathy and understanding during her moments of vulnerability. Their unwavering support empowers Lily to confront her insecurities and make decisions that prioritize her emotional well-being. This emphasizes the transformative power of human connection in overcoming personal challenges and fostering resilience. Ultimately, the story culminates in a powerful realization about the necessity of setting boundaries and prioritizing self-care. Lily's decision to end her relationship with Mark symbolizes a turning point in her journey towards self-empowerment. In conclusion, the story encapsulates a profound lesson about the importance of self-acceptance, respect in relationships, open communication, the support of loved ones, and the necessity of setting boundaries. Through Lily's journey, we are reminded of the transformative power of introspection, empathy, and human connection in navigating life's challenges and embracing our true selves. It is through confronting our insecurities with courage and compassion that we can ultimately find the strength to live authentically and pursue happiness on our own terms. My wife doesn't want me to get pregnant through IVF because she doesn't want man's sperm in me, which really confuses me. My name is Emma, and I'm 27 years old. 7 years ago, in Copenhagen, my life changed in ways I could never have imagined. It was a vibrant city, full of life and possibilities, and I was a 20-year-old student, ready to embrace everything it had to offer. I was studying primary education, driven by my love for children and teaching. Little did I know that a simple party would introduce me to someone who would become the love of my life. It all started at a mutual friends party during university. I had been hesitant to go, preferring quiet evenings with a book over loud gatherings. But a friend convinced me, insisting I needed to socialize more. The party was in a cozy apartment in central Copenhagen, filled with students laughing and chatting. I felt out of place, trying to find a corner where I could blend in with the background. That's when I noticed another girl doing the same. Her name was Sophia. She was standing alone on the balcony, looking at the city lights. Sophia had an air of quiet contemplation about her, as if she were lost in her own thoughts, away from the buzz of the party. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and she wore a simple yet elegant dress that highlighted her natural beauty. There was something about her that drew me in, perhaps the way she seemed so comfortable in her solitude, or maybe it was the slight hint of a smile playing at the corners of her lips. I mustered the courage to join her. As I stepped onto the balcony, the cool night air embraced me, offering a welcome contrast to the warmth and noise inside. I greeted her, and she turned to look at me with curious dark eyes. Up close I could see the intelligence and warmth in her gaze. We exchanged a few polite words about the party and our mutual friend who had invited us. There was a natural ease to our conversation. A flow that felt both comforting and exciting. We started talking about our studies. Sophia was studying engineering, and as she spoke about her projects, her eyes lit up with passion. She described the challenges she faced in a male-dominated field and her determination to excel. I could see the dedication and drive in her, and it was inspiring. I shared my own experiences studying primary education, my love for teaching, and the joy I found in working with children. She listened intently, her genuine interest making me feel valued and understood. As we talked, I found myself drawn to her not just physically, but intellectually and emotionally. Sophia had a way of speaking that was both articulate and thoughtful. She expressed her ideas clearly and confidently, yet there was a humility about her that made her incredibly approachable. I admired her strength and the quiet resilience that seemed to underpin everything she did. We continued our conversation, moving from our studies to our future aspirations. Sophia spoke of her dreams to design sustainable energy solutions, hoping to make a difference in the world. I shared my hopes of becoming a teacher who could inspire and nurture young minds. There was a moment when our eyes met, and I felt a connection that was deeper than words. It was as if we had known each other for much longer than just a few minutes. The sounds of the party faded into the background as we became engrossed in our own little world. I felt completely at ease with Sophia, a sense of comfort and familiarity that was rare for me in social situations. She had a calming presence, and her thoughtful responses and insights made our conversation enriching and engaging. We eventually realized how much time had passed and decided to exchange contact information, not wanting to lose the connection we had just discovered. As I left the party that night, my mind was buzzing with thoughts of Sophia. There was something special about her, something that made me eager to see her again. After our initial meeting at the party, Sophia and I quickly became close friends. We started meeting up regularly, our favorite spots being cozy cafes and serene parks around Copenhagen. There was a quaint little cafe near our university that became our go-to place. It had an inviting atmosphere with warm lighting, comfortable chairs, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee lingering in the air. We would spend hours there, talking and laughing, losing track of time. Our conversations ranged from light-hearted topics to deeply personal stories. Sophia would share her experiences studying engineering, the challenges she faced as a woman in a male-dominated field, and her dreams of designing sustainable energy solutions. Her passion for her work was infectious, and I admired her determination and drive. I, in turn, talked about my love for teaching, the joys and frustrations of working with children, and my hopes of making a difference in young lives. Sophia listened intently, her genuine interest and encouragement making me feel valued and understood. We also bonded over our shared interests in classic literature and science fiction. We would recommend books to each other, discussing the characters and themes in great detail. There was something incredibly comforting about these shared moments, a sense of connection that went beyond words. As our friendship deepened, I started noticing the small quirks that made Sophia unique. The way she furrowed her brow when she was deep in thought, the soft chuckle that escaped her lips when she found something amusing, and the gentle way she would brush a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Each of these quirks made her more endearing to me. At the same time, Sophia seemed to appreciate my passion for teaching. She often told me how much she admired my dedication and the way I connected with my students. Her compliments meant a lot to me, and I found myself looking forward to our meetups more than anything else. As the months passed, my feelings for Sophia grew stronger. I found myself thinking about her constantly, my heart fluttering whenever we were together. I knew I had fallen in love with her, but the fear of ruining our friendship held me back. I was terrified that confessing my feelings would make things awkward between us or worse, that she wouldn't feel the same way. One rainy afternoon, we were sitting in our favorite cafe. The soft jazz music playing in the background created a comforting atmosphere. I had been debating with myself for weeks, writing down my feelings in my journal, trying to muster the courage to tell her how I felt. My heart pounded as I decided to finally confess. "Sophia," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked up from her coffee, her dark eyes filled with curiosity and concern. "I've been feeling this way for a while now, and I can't keep it to myself any longer. I love you. More than just a friend." As the words left my lips, a wave of anxiety washed over me. I expected the worst, but to my surprise, Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Not of sadness, but of joy. She reached out and took my hand, her touch sending a shiver down my spine. "I've been feeling the same way," she confessed, her voice soft but steady. "I've been so scared of ruining what we have and of how people might react. But I love you too, Emma." Her words filled me with a mix of relief and overwhelming happiness. We sat there, holding hands, both of us smiling through our tears. In that cozy cafe, surrounded by the warmth and familiarity of our favorite spot, we shared our first kiss. It was a moment of pure connection and happiness, marking the beginning of our romantic relationship. Our journey was far from easy. We faced societal judgments and prejudice. While Copenhagen was a relatively accepting city, there were still instances of discrimination and hostility. Some of our peers made hurtful comments, and there were moments when we felt the weight of societal expectations pressing down on us. However, we found solace in the acceptance of the local LGBT community, attending events and gatherings that made us feel embraced and understood. Family reactions were another hurdle. My family was immediately supportive. My parents especially were overjoyed and threw a small, intimate party to celebrate our love. They had always been open-minded and loving, and their acceptance meant the world to me. Sophia's family, on the other hand, was more reserved. Her mother was particularly concerned about societal judgment, and her father remained silent, needing time to process the news. Sophia's family, on the other hand, was more reserved. When she first came out to them and told them about our relationship, it was met with a mix of silence and concern. Her mother was particularly worried about societal judgment. She expressed fears about how the extended family and their small-town community would react. Her father remained silent, processing the news at his own pace. The first time I met Sophia's parents, I was incredibly nervous. Sophia had prepared me, explaining that they needed time to adjust. Her mother, Ingrid, greeted me politely but with noticeable hesitation. She was cordial but kept a certain distance. It was clear she was struggling with her own preconceptions and concerns about our relationship. Her father, Lars, was quiet, offering a firm handshake but saying very little. Over the following months we made several visits to her parents' home. Each time, I felt like we were slowly chipping away at a wall of discomfort and unfamiliarity. Ingrid would ask me questions about my family and my career plans. There were moments of awkward silence, but I tried to remain open and honest, hoping to show them how much I loved their daughter. The turning point came during one of these visits. We were having dinner, and the conversation turned to future plans. Sophia and I mentioned our hopes of getting married someday. Ingrid looked visibly uneasy, and Lars finally spoke up. He admitted that he had been struggling to understand and accept our relationship, not because he didn't want Sophia to be happy, but because it was so different from what he had envisioned for her. His honesty opened a door for genuine conversation. I shared with them how much Sophia meant to me and how committed I was to our future together. I expressed my respect for their family and my hope that they could come to accept and support us. It was a heartfelt and emotional discussion, and by the end of the evening, there was a noticeable shift in their attitude. They still had reservations, but they were beginning to see our relationship through a different lens. Ingrid started inviting me to more family gatherings, and her demeanor gradually softened. She began to ask more personal questions, showing genuine interest in my life and background. Lars, though still reserved, started to engage more during our visits. He shared stories from his own life, slowly building a connection with me. There were still moments of tension, especially when extended family members were involved. Some of Sophia's relatives were openly skeptical or disapproving, and it was clear that Ingrid and Lars were also navigating these external pressures. However, Sophia and I stood firm, supporting each other and maintaining open communication with her parents. Our involvement in the local LGBT community also played a role in bridging the gap. We invited Ingrid and Lars to attend a Pride event with us, hoping to show them the supportive and vibrant community we were part of. They agreed, albeit reluctantly. The event was an eye-opener for them. Seeing the love and acceptance among the attendees, and the positive atmosphere, seemed to have a profound impact on them. Ingrid later told us that the experience made her realize how much support we had and how important it was for us to be true to ourselves. She began to make an effort to understand our world better. We shared articles and books about LGBT issues with her, and she gradually became more educated and empathetic. Over time, their acceptance grew. Ingrid became more affectionate, treating me like part of the family. She would call me to check in and invite us over for dinner regularly. Lars remained quieter but showed his support in his own ways, helping us with practical matters, like fixing things in our apartment, and always being there when we needed advice. Living in Copenhagen, we also faced societal judgments from peers and strangers. There were occasional homophobic remarks and exclusion, but we stood strong together. These experiences, though painful, brought us closer. We learned to lean on each other for strength and support. We also became involved in activism, attending pride parades and advocating for LGBT rights. These activities empowered us and helped us build a network of supportive friends. 2 years into our relationship, we decided to move in together. It was an exciting step, filled with both joy and challenges. We found a small, cozy apartment that suited our needs. Decorating our new home was an adventure. My love for vintage decor clashed with Sophia's minimalist style, but we learned to compromise and create a space that reflected both our personalities. Living together brought us closer, but it also meant adjusting to each other's routines and habits. We had our share of small arguments over household responsibilities, but we always resolved them through open communication. When Sophia and I were together, every moment felt like an adventure. The excitement of discovering each other anew filled our days with joy. We were eager to make each moment special, and our early dating days were marked by romantic gestures that spoke volumes about our growing affection. Sophia had a knack for planning the perfect dates. One of our favorites was a picnic in a secluded spot she had found in one of Copenhagen's beautiful parks. She surprised me with a basket filled with my favorite foods: fresh bread, cheeses, fruit, and a bottle of wine. We spread a blanket under a large oak tree, its branches providing shade and a sense of intimacy. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the soft hum of nearby chatter. We spent hours talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. The simplicity of the picnic made it all the more special, a perfect reflection of our blossoming love. Late-night walks became another cherished routine. After a long day, we would meet up and stroll through the quiet streets of Copenhagen, the city lights casting a warm glow on our path. The world seemed to slow down during these walks, giving us the space to connect on a deeper level. We would often end up by the waterfront, watching the moonlight dance on the waves. Sophia would hold my hand, and we would talk about our dreams, our fears, and our hopes for the future. Those walks were a time for us to be completely open with each other, free from distractions. Sophia's surprise dates were always a delight. One evening, she took me to an outdoor movie screening. It was a classic romantic film, and she had prepared a cozy setup with blankets and pillows. We sat under the stars, the cool night air wrapping around us as we watched the movie. The magic of the film, combined with the enchantment of being with Sophia, made it an unforgettable experience. She had a way of turning ordinary moments into extraordinary memories. As our relationship deepened, so did our trust. We began sharing our deeper insecurities and personal challenges, finding solace and strength in each other's support. I confided in Sophia about my fears of not being good enough as a teacher, my worries about failing my students, and the pressure I felt to live up to my own expectations. Sophia listened with patience and understanding, offering words of encouragement that bolstered my confidence. One of the major challenges we faced early on in our relationship was Sophia's struggle with sexism and homophobia at her engineering firm. It was a difficult time for her, and seeing her in pain was heart-wrenching. Sophia had always been passionate about her work, but the toxic environment was taking a toll on her mental health and self-esteem. She would come home exhausted and demoralized, the weight of her experiences evident in her eyes. Sophia confided in me about the specific incidents that made her feel isolated and undervalued. She spoke about the offhand remarks, the condescending attitudes, and the blatant discrimination she faced. One particularly painful incident involved a project she had been leading. Despite her expertise and hard work, a male colleague was given credit for her achievements. The frustration and hurt she felt were palpable, and I was determined to help her navigate through it. Together, we devised a plan to address these challenges. I encouraged Sophia to document the instances of discrimination and to seek support from her company's HR department. We researched her rights and found resources that could help her build a strong case. It wasn't easy, but Sophia's resilience and determination shone through. She confronted her superiors and demanded the respect she deserved. Her courage was inspiring, and I stood by her every step of the way. Our relationship grew stronger as we faced this adversity together. Sophia's fight against sexism and homophobia became a shared battle, one that united us in a profound way. I made sure she knew she wasn't alone, that I was there to support her unconditionally. Whether it was listening to her vent after a particularly tough day or helping her prepare for meetings with HR, I did everything I could to be her rock. In the midst of these challenges, we found strength and solidarity in the LGBT community. We decided to attend a pride parade together, hoping to draw strength from the collective power of the community. The parade was a vibrant and joyous celebration of love and acceptance. The streets were filled with people of all ages, genders, and backgrounds, united by a common cause. The atmosphere was electric, and the sense of belonging was overwhelming. As we marched together, hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The parade was a powerful reminder that we were part of something larger than ourselves, a community that stood together in the face of adversity. Sophia and I cheered, danced, and celebrated our love openly, surrounded by people who understood our struggles and supported our journey. The Pride Parade strengthened our bond and gave us the courage to continue fighting for what was right. It reminded us that we were not alone, that we had allies and a supportive network behind us. The sense of solidarity and empowerment we felt that day carried over into our everyday lives, giving us the strength to face any challenge that came our way. Back in our everyday lives, we continued to support each other through the highs and lows. Sophia's determination and resilience paid off, and she began to see positive changes at work. Her superiors started to recognize her contributions, and she found allies among her colleagues who supported her fight for equality. It was a slow process, but the progress she made was a testament to her strength and perseverance. Our relationship flourished as we navigated these challenges together. The trust and support we built during this time laid a strong foundation for our future. We learned to communicate openly, to lean on each other during tough times, and to celebrate each other's successes. The weekend getaway that Sophia planned was a complete surprise. She had hinted for weeks about a special trip, building my anticipation and curiosity. On the Friday morning of our departure, she packed the car with supplies, and we set off on a drive away from the city's hustle and bustle. The urban landscape gradually gave way to rolling hills and serene countryside, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me as we left the familiar sights behind. After a few hours, we arrived at our destination, a secluded beach. The scene was breathtakingly beautiful, with golden sand stretching out to meet the gentle waves of the sea. It was a private spot, away from the usual tourist trails, offering a perfect escape from the world. Sophia had chosen a location that was not just picturesque but also incredibly peaceful, a place where we could truly relax and enjoy each other's company. We spent the first day exploring the coastline, collecting seashells and swimming in the clear, cool water. Sophia had packed a picnic basket filled with our favorite foods, fresh bread, cheeses, fruit, and a bottle of wine. We spread a blanket under a large oak tree near the beach, enjoying a leisurely meal while the sound of the waves provided a soothing soundtrack. The simplicity of the picnic made it all the more special, a perfect reflection of our relationship. That evening we sat by a campfire, roasting marshmallows and talking about everything and nothing. The stars above us were bright and numerous, and the moon cast a silver glow over the water. The ambiance was magical, and I felt incredibly lucky to be sharing this moment with Sophia. On the last night of our getaway, Sophia suggested we take a walk along the shore. The sun had set, and the sky was a deep indigo, dotted with countless stars. The moonlight reflected off the water, creating a shimmering pathway along the waves. We walked hand in hand, the cool sand beneath our feet, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of the ocean. Sophia led me to a spot where she had laid out a blanket and some pillows, creating a cozy setup for stargazing. We settled down, and she pointed out constellations, sharing stories and myths associated with them. I was entranced by the beauty of the night sky and the thoughtfulness of Sophia's planning. She had always known how to make me feel special and loved, and tonight was no exception. After a while, Sophia told me she had a small surprise for me. She handed me a seashell, its pearly surface glistening in the moonlight. I opened it, expecting to find a simple token or perhaps a note. Instead, nestled inside the shell was a delicate ring, its design intricate and elegant, perfectly capturing Sophia's taste and thoughtfulness. I looked up at Sophia, my heart pounding with surprise and emotion. She took my hands in hers, her eyes filled with love and sincerity. Her voice was steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes as she spoke. "Emma, you mean everything to me. I can't imagine my life without you. You've been my rock, my confidant, and my greatest love. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy streamed down my face as I realized the magnitude of the moment. I felt an overwhelming rush of happiness and love. The world seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us in that perfect magical moment. I could see the depth of her feelings in her eyes, and I knew without a doubt that this was where I belonged. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Sophia, I will marry you." The relief and joy on Sophia's face mirrored my own. We embraced, holding each other tightly, both of us overwhelmed by the intensity of our feelings. The love and connection we shared felt more profound than ever before. Our first kiss as an engaged couple was tender and filled with promise, sealing our commitment to each other. We spent the rest of the evening on the beach, talking about our future and dreaming of the life we would build together. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night, as if they were celebrating with us. Sophia had brought a small bottle of champagne, and we toasted to our future, clinking our glasses as we sat on the blanket, the sound of the waves providing a soothing background. The following morning, we watched the sunrise together, sitting wrapped in a blanket, our fingers intertwined. The sky gradually changed from dark blue to hues of pink and orange, signaling the start of a new day and a new chapter in our lives. We were filled with a sense of hope and excitement, knowing that we were stepping into the future together. As we packed up and prepared to leave the beach, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. From our first meeting at a friend's party to this incredible moment of engagement, our journey has been filled with love, challenges, and growth. Sophia's proposal was the perfect culmination of our relationship, a testament to the deep bond we shared and the unbreakable commitment we had to each other. The drive back to Copenhagen was filled with laughter and joy. We talked about our engagement, the wedding we would plan, and the life we envisioned together. The excitement and anticipation of what lay ahead made the journey seem shorter, and before we knew it, we were back home, ready to share our news with friends and family. The engagement marked the beginning of an exciting and somewhat stressful period of wedding planning. Sophia and I were determined to create a day that truly reflected our love and values, blending traditional elements with modern inclusive touches. We quickly realized that planning a wedding was not just about choosing flowers and venues but also about navigating family dynamics and societal expectations. Sophia's family had come a long way since she first came out to them. Her parents, Ingrid and Lars, had grown to accept and support our relationship, but there were still moments of hesitation and uncertainty. They wanted to be involved in the wedding planning, and their support meant a lot to us. However, they sometimes struggled with the idea of a non-traditional wedding. On the other hand, my family was enthusiastic and eager to help from the start. My parents especially were thrilled about the wedding and offered their assistance in any way they could. My mother took on the role of chief planner, coordinating meetings and helping us make decisions. Her excitement was contagious, and her organizational skills were invaluable. Bringing both families together for planning sessions was an interesting experience. There were differences in opinions and expectations, but it was heartening to see everyone working towards a common goal. We had many discussions around the dining table, sipping coffee and brainstorming ideas. Ingrid and Lars slowly opened up, sharing their thoughts and suggestions. They wanted the wedding to be a beautiful and memorable day, and their input, though sometimes traditional, was rooted in a genuine desire to support us. One of the main challenges we faced was balancing traditional wedding customs with our desire for a modern, inclusive ceremony. We wanted our wedding to reflect who we were as individuals and as a couple, which meant incorporating elements that were meaningful to us while respecting the customs and traditions that our families held dear. We decided on a garden wedding, a perfect blend of natural beauty and elegance. The botanical garden we chose was stunning, with lush greenery and vibrant flowers providing a picturesque backdrop. However, planning an outdoor ceremony came with its own set of challenges, such as weather concerns and logistics. Traditional customs, such as walking down the aisle and the exchange of vows, were important to us, but we wanted to put our own twist on them. We decided to walk down the aisle together, symbolizing our partnership and equality. This decision was met with mixed reactions. While my family embraced the idea, Sophia's parents were initially unsure. They had envisioned a more traditional procession, but after some discussions, they came around and supported our choice. Writing our own vows was another way we personalized our ceremony. We spent many evenings crafting words that truly reflected our journey and our commitment to each other. It was a deeply emotional process, filled with tears and laughter, as we revisited memories and expressed our hopes for the future. Sharing these intimate promises in front of our loved ones was incredibly important to us. Navigating the guest list was another challenge. We wanted to invite those who had supported us throughout our relationship, but we also had to consider family expectations. Sophia's extended family included some conservative members who had been less than supportive. Deciding whether to invite them was difficult, but ultimately, we chose to surround ourselves with people who genuinely cared for and supported us. Throughout the planning process, we were overwhelmed by the support and love from our friends and family. Our close friends rallied around us, offering their time and talents to make our wedding special. A friend who was a graphic designer created beautiful invitations and programs, incorporating a subtle rainbow motif that celebrated our pride and love. Another friend, a talented musician, offered to perform at the ceremony, adding a personal touch to our special day. Our families, despite their initial reservations, came together in ways we hadn't expected. My mother and Ingrid formed an unlikely bond over wedding preparations, spending hours discussing flower arrangements and decorations. Lars, who had been more reserved, took on the task of handling logistics, ensuring everything ran smoothly. As the wedding day approached, the sense of unity and support grew stronger. Our friends organized a pre-wedding celebration, a mix of traditional and modern elements, that brought everyone together in a joyous and relaxed atmosphere. It was a beautiful reminder of the love and community that surrounded us. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright, with a gentle breeze rustling the leaves in the botanical garden. Sophia and I woke up feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. We had planned and prepared for this day for months, and now it was finally here. The garden was transformed into a magical setting, with flowers and decorations that reflected our personalities and love. The ceremony took place in a secluded part of the garden, under a large oak tree. White chairs were arranged in rows, adorned with delicate floral arrangements. A beautiful arch made of intertwined branches and flowers stood at the front, framing the spot where we would exchange our vows. We decided to walk down the aisle together, hand in hand. As we made our way through the garden path, the string quartet played our favorite song, creating an enchanting atmosphere. The sight of our friends and family, smiling and teary-eyed, filled us with a deep sense of love and gratitude. Our officiant, a close friend who had been with us from the beginning, welcomed everyone and spoke about the journey that had brought us to this moment. She highlighted the importance of love, commitment, and the courage it took to be true to ourselves. Her words were heartfelt and touching, setting the perfect tone for the ceremony. When it was time for our vows, Sophia and I faced each other, our hands clasped tightly. We took turns reading the promises we had written, our voices trembling with emotion. Sophia spoke about the strength and resilience she saw in me, the joy I brought into her life, and her commitment to stand by my side through everything. I shared my gratitude for her unwavering support, her kindness, and the deep connection we shared. As we spoke, there wasn't a dry eye among our guests. The emotional weight of our promises, coupled with the beauty of the setting, made the moment incredibly powerful. One of the highlights of the ceremony was a surprise musical performance by a friend who had known us since college. She sang a song that held special meaning for us, her voice carrying through the garden and adding a magical touch to the proceedings. It was a moment of pure beauty, and the love and effort she put into her performance touched our hearts deeply. Following the ceremony, we moved to a tented area for the reception. The tent was decorated with fairy lights and colorful flowers, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. Each table had a small booklet that shared our love story, from our first meeting to the proposal, allowing guests to reminisce and celebrate our journey with us. The meal was a blend of our favorite foods, with a focus on local and sustainable ingredients. We wanted the reception to feel like a big, joyous family dinner, and the warm communal atmosphere made everyone feel included and cherished. As a special touch, we included a dessert bar featuring treats from both our cultures, a sweet nod to our backgrounds. The speeches were another memorable part of the reception. Our friends and family shared stories and well wishes, their words filled with humor and love. A close friend, who had been there since the beginning of our relationship, gave a particularly moving speech that had everyone laughing and crying in equal measure. Their words were a beautiful reminder of the journey we had taken and the support we had along the way. Dancing under the stars was a magical experience. We had hired a DJ who played a mix of our favorite songs, and the dance floor was never empty. We shared our first dance as a married couple to a song that held special meaning for us, and as we moved together, it felt like the world melted away, leaving just the two of us in that perfect moment. One of the most profound aspects of our wedding was the act of publicly declaring our love despite societal prejudices. There were moments of fear and uncertainty leading up to the wedding, worries about how some guests might react or whether we would face judgment. But standing there, surrounded by the people who mattered most, those fears faded away. The overwhelming support and love from our friends and family reaffirmed our belief in the power of love and community. Our wedding wasn't just a celebration of our relationship, it was a testament to the progress we had made and the acceptance we had found. It was a beautiful and empowering experience, one that reminded us of the importance of being true to ourselves and standing up for what we believed in. As the evening came to a close, we took a moment to step away from the festivities and reflect on the day. We stood together, looking out at the twinkling lights and the joyful faces of our guests. It had been a day filled with love, laughter, and memorable moments, a perfect start to the rest of our lives together. Our wedding was everything we had hoped for and more. It was a day filled with love, support, and joy, a celebration not just of our relationship but of the community and the journey that had brought us together. As we looked around at our friends and family, dancing and laughing under the twinkling lights, we felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and happiness. It was the perfect start to the rest of our lives together. After the excitement and whirlwind of our wedding, Sophia and I settled into our life as a married couple. The transition from engaged to married life was a beautiful journey of establishing new routines and planning for our future together. Each day brought a new sense of comfort and familiarity, deepening our bond and strengthening our commitment. One of the first things we did was to create a space that truly felt like home. We had been living together for a few years, but now, as a married couple, there was a renewed sense of purpose in making our apartment a reflection of us. We spent weekends rearranging furniture, adding personal touches, and filling our home with items that brought us joy. Sophia's minimalist style and my love for vintage decor blended seamlessly, creating a cozy and inviting space that we both loved. Establishing routines was a natural next step. We both had busy schedules, but we made it a priority to carve out time for each other. Mornings became our sacred time, a peaceful start to the day before the rush of work. We would sit together over breakfast, sipping coffee and discussing our plans for the day. These quiet moments of connection set a positive tone and made the hectic days more manageable. Evenings were dedicated to unwinding and reconnecting. Sophia often came home tired from her demanding job in engineering, and I would try to make her transition home as relaxing as possible. We developed a routine of cooking dinner together, experimenting with new recipes and enjoying the simple pleasure of a home-cooked meal. Cooking became a shared activity that allowed us to bond and de-stress. We would chat about our day, sharing both the highlights and the challenges. Weekends were our time to explore and have fun. We loved discovering new parts of Copenhagen, visiting museums, parks, and cafes. We also made it a point to continue with our late-night walks, a tradition that had started early in our relationship. These walks were a way for us to stay connected, to talk about our dreams and plans, and to simply enjoy each other's company. As we settled into our married life, our careers also began to flourish. Sophia's dedication and hard work at her engineering firm did not go unnoticed. Despite the challenges she faced early on, she persevered and made significant strides in her field. Her resilience and expertise earned her the respect of her colleagues and superiors. One of the most significant milestones was when Sophia was promoted to a senior engineering position. The promotion was a recognition of her technical skills, leadership abilities, and the innovative projects she had spearheaded. It was a well-deserved achievement, and I was incredibly proud of her. The promotion also brought new responsibilities and challenges, but Sophia faced them with her characteristic determination and grace. With her new role, Sophia's work schedule became even more demanding. There were late nights and occasional weekends at the office, but we made it work. We communicated openly about our needs and supported each other through the busy times. Sophia's promotion also meant a better financial situation for us, allowing us to save more for our future goals. Meanwhile, my career as a primary school teacher was also reaching new heights. I had always been passionate about teaching, and my dedication to my students was unwavering. The recognition came when I was awarded Teacher of the Year at my school. It was an honor that filled me with immense pride and gratitude. The award was a testament to my hard work and the positive impact I had on my students. It was a reminder of why I loved teaching and the difference I could make in young lives. The award also brought new opportunities, including an invitation to speak at educational conferences and the chance to mentor new teachers. Balancing our successful careers with our personal life required effort and commitment. We made it a priority to celebrate each other's achievements and to support one another during challenging times. When Sophia had a big presentation or a critical project deadline, I would make sure to be extra supportive, taking on more household responsibilities and providing emotional encouragement. Similarly, when I was preparing for a conference or dealing with a particularly tough school day, Sophia was there to lift my spirits and offer her unwavering support. With our careers on solid ground, we began to think more seriously about our future. We had always talked about the possibility of starting a family, and now that we were married and more established, those conversations became more concrete. We explored different options, including adoption and surrogacy, and had many heartfelt discussions about what would be best for us. We also set financial goals, creating a plan to save for a house. While we loved our apartment, we dreamed of having a home with more space and a garden where we could enjoy outdoor activities. We started a savings fund and carefully managed our finances to make this dream a reality. Travel was another shared passion, and we made a list of places we wanted to visit together. From exploring the historic cities of Europe to relaxing on tropical beaches, our travel plans were a way to create lasting memories and experience new adventures. We scheduled annual vacations, making sure to take time off from our busy schedules to recharge and reconnect. Our involvement in the LGBT community also remained an important part of our lives. We continued to participate in Pride events, advocate for LGBT rights, and support local organizations. Our commitment to the community was a source of strength and pride, and we were determined to give back and make a positive impact. Of course, life wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of stress and tension, times when the demands of work and personal life felt overwhelming. We faced misunderstandings and disagreements, but our strong foundation of communication and trust helped us navigate these rough patches. One particular challenge was managing the expectations of our extended families. While our parents were supportive, there were still moments of tension, especially during holidays and family gatherings. Balancing time between both families and managing differing opinions required patience and understanding. We made it a point to communicate openly with our families, setting boundaries when necessary and ensuring that our relationship remained a priority. Another challenge was dealing with societal prejudices. Despite the progress that had been made, there were still instances of discrimination and bias. Whether it was insensitive comments or more overt acts of homophobia, these experiences were painful. However, we faced them together, finding strength in each other and in our community. Through it all, our love and commitment to each other only grew stronger. We learned to navigate life's ups and downs as a team, supporting each other and celebrating our successes together. Our shared experiences, both good and challenging, deepened our connection and reinforced the foundation of our relationship. One of the most profound lessons we learned was the importance of making time for each other. Despite our busy schedules, we prioritize our relationship, making sure to have regular date nights and moments of connection. Whether it was a weekend getaway, a simple dinner at home, or a spontaneous adventure, these moments were essential in keeping our relationship strong and vibrant. We also continued to nurture our individual passions and interests. Sophia pursued further studies in sustainable engineering, attending workshops and conferences to stay at the forefront of her field. I took on new projects at school, developing innovative teaching methods and collaborating with colleagues to enhance the educational experience for our students. Our journey as a married couple was filled with love, growth, and endless possibilities. We faced challenges with resilience and embraced opportunities with enthusiasm. The routines we established, the milestones we achieved, and the dreams we pursued were all part of the beautiful tapestry of our life together. After a few years of settling into married life, Sophia and I began to seriously discuss the idea of starting a family. It was a topic we had touched upon many times before, but now it felt like the right time to delve deeper. We spent countless nights lying in bed, imagining our home filled with the laughter and chaos of children. The idea of becoming parents excited and terrified us in equal measure. Our conversations were filled with dreams and hopes. We talked about the kind of parents we wanted to be, the values we hoped to instill in our children, and the adventures we would have as a family. Sophia imagined teaching our children about science and engineering, fostering their curiosity and creativity. I envisioned reading bedtime stories and planning educational outings, nurturing their love for learning. As we delved deeper into our discussions, we realized that there were many practical considerations to address. We needed to explore the various options available to us as a same-sex couple. Adoption, surrogacy, and IVF were all possibilities, each with its own set of challenges and rewards. We began our research by attending seminars and informational sessions. There were numerous organizations and support groups dedicated to helping LGBT couples navigate the process of starting a family. We met with doctors, legal experts, and other couples who had gone through similar journeys. These meetings were incredibly informative and provided us with a wealth of knowledge and resources. Adoption was one of the first options we considered. We attended several adoption seminars and met with agencies that specialized in placing children with same-sex couples. The idea of providing a loving home for a child in need was deeply appealing to both of us. However, the process was long and complex, involving extensive paperwork, background checks, and a waiting period that could stretch for years. We also learned that there were legal hurdles to navigate, especially when adopting internationally. Surrogacy was another option we explored. We met with several surrogacy agencies and spoke with surrogates who had helped other couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. The idea of having a biological connection to our child was important to us, and surrogacy seemed like a viable path. However, it was also an expensive and emotionally taxing process. We would need to find a surrogate who was a good match, navigate the legal aspects, and be prepared for the financial investment. IVF was another option on the table, and we attended several consultations with fertility specialists. The medical professionals explained the process in detail, including the use of donor sperm. The idea of IVF intrigued us, but it also brought up a host of emotions and concerns. As we delved deeper into the IVF discussions, I began to notice a growing discomfort in Sophia. At first, she didn't say much, but I could sense her unease. During one of our consultations, she finally voiced her concerns. Sophia expressed discomfort with the idea of using donor sperm, saying she didn't want a man's cum in me. Her words took me by surprise, and I almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but I quickly realized she was serious. I tried to understand her perspective, but I felt hurt and confused. To me, IVF seemed like a simple and logical solution to our desire to have a child. The science was clear, the success rates were promising, and many same-sex couples had successfully used IVF to start their families. I couldn't comprehend why Sophia was so opposed to it, especially since we both understood the medical aspects very well. I would lie awake at night, replaying our conversations in my mind, trying to piece together why she felt this way. I felt a growing sense of frustration and helplessness. It seemed like every time we made progress, we were met with another roadblock. I wanted to support Sophia, but I also felt that she was being unreasonable and overly cautious about something that should be straightforward. Our arguments often ended in frustration and tears. The same points would be raised again and again, with neither of us feeling heard or understood. I would try to present the logical aspects, the statistics, the safety, and the success stories of other couples. Sophia, however, would respond with her emotional and psychological concerns. Sophia tried to explain that it wasn't just about the physical aspect of IVF. She spoke about her deeper feelings of discomfort and unease. She worried about the implications of using donor sperm and the potential emotional impact on our family. She was concerned about how the child might feel about their origins and the possible identity issues they might face. I struggled to understand these concerns. To me, it felt like Sophia was overcomplicating something that should be straightforward. I would counter her arguments with practical solutions, suggesting we could be open and honest with our child about their conception, provide them with all the love and support they needed, and ensure they felt secure in their identity. The emotional toll of these discussions was significant. I felt like we were on a constant roller coaster, with moments of hope quickly followed by despair. There were times when I felt like giving up, wondering if we would ever find a resolution that worked for both of us. I questioned whether we were ready for the challenges of parenthood if we couldn't even agree on the first step. I also felt a deep sense of isolation. It seemed like no one else could fully understand the complexity of our situation. Friends and family offered support, but their well-meaning advice often missed the mark. They didn't grasp the intricacies of our emotional and psychological struggles, and their suggestions sometimes felt dismissive of Sophia's concerns. During one particularly intense argument, Sophia broke down and shared more about her fears. She felt like the process of IVF was invasive and that it imposed traditional gender roles on our relationship. She had spent her entire career fighting against sexism and homophobia, and the idea of using donor sperm felt like another way in which societal norms were being imposed on us. She worried about the dynamics it would create within our family and how it might affect our child's sense of identity. Our arguments often ended in frustration and tears. Sophia tried to explain that it wasn't just about the physical aspect of IVF, but also about her deeper feelings of discomfort and unease. She worried about the implications of using donor sperm and the potential emotional impact on our family. I struggled to understand these concerns, feeling like she was overcomplicating something that should be straightforward. The tension began to take a toll on our relationship. We had always been able to communicate openly and support each other through challenges, but this issue seemed to create a rift between us. I felt like Sophia was being irrational and stubborn, while she felt like I wasn't respecting her feelings and concerns. Desperate to find a resolution, we decided to seek counseling. We found a therapist who specialized in working with LGBT couples and booked our first session. The counseling sessions provided a safe space for us to express our thoughts and emotions without judgment. Our therapist helped us unpack the layers of our conflict, exploring the deeper fears and insecurities that were driving our reactions. Through counseling, I began to understand that Sophia's discomfort with IVF wasn't just about the physical process. It was rooted in her feelings about traditional gender roles and societal expectations. She had spent her entire career fighting against sexism and homophobia, and the idea of using donor sperm felt like another way in which societal norms were being imposed on us. She worried about the implications for our family dynamics and the potential for judgment from others. Understanding Sophia's perspective helped me to see the issue in a new light. I realized that her concerns were valid and that we needed to find a solution that respected both of our feelings. We continued to attend counseling sessions, working through our emotions and finding ways to support each other. One breakthrough moment came when Sophia admitted that she felt pressured to conform to traditional notions of family and parenthood. She felt like she was being forced into a role that didn't align with her identity and values. Hearing this helped me to empathize with her struggle and to see that her opposition to IVF was about more than just the physical process. Hearing this, I began to see the issue in a new light. Sophia's discomfort wasn't just about the medical procedure, it was about the deeper implications and her struggle against societal expectations. She felt pressured to conform to traditional notions of family and parenthood, and that pressure was causing her significant distress. Realizing the depth of Sophia's feelings, I suggested we seek counseling. We found a therapist who specialized in working with LGBT couples and began attending sessions. The counseling sessions provided a safe space for us to express our thoughts and emotions without judgment. Our therapist helped us unpack the layers of our conflict, exploring the deeper fears and insecurities that were driving our reactions. Through counseling, I began to understand that Sophia's discomfort with IVF was not something to be dismissed. It was a legitimate concern rooted in her experiences and values. The process of working through our conflict in therapy was enlightening and healing. We learned to communicate more openly and to respect each other's feelings. After many months of discussions, counseling sessions, and emotional highs and lows, we finally found a path that felt right for both of us. We decided to pursue surrogacy using both of our eggs and a known sperm donor. This approach allowed us to have a biological connection to our child while respecting Sophia's discomfort with traditional IVF. The decision brought a sense of relief and renewed hope. We felt that we had found a solution that honored our individual needs and our shared vision for our family. We began the process by reaching out to a close friend who had previously expressed a willingness to be a sperm donor. His name was Mark, a longtime friend from our university days. Mark had always been supportive of our relationship and understood the unique challenges we faced. We invited him over for dinner, intending to discuss our hopes and concerns openly. The dinner was filled with nervous anticipation. As we settled into the cozy ambiance of our living room, we explained our decision to pursue surrogacy and why we felt Mark would be the ideal donor. We emphasized that his role would be more than just a donor. He would be part of our extended family, playing a significant role in our child's life. We discussed our hopes for the future and the kind of relationship we envisioned him having with our child. Mark listened intently, nodding thoughtfully as we spoke. He then shared his thoughts, expressing his admiration for our courage and commitment. He agreed to help us in our journey to parenthood, stating that he felt honored to be part of something so meaningful. His support and understanding were incredibly reassuring, and it felt like a significant step forward in our journey. With Mark on board, our next step was to find a surrogate. We worked with a surrogacy agency that specialized in matching couples with surrogates who shared their values and vision. The agency was known for its rigorous selection process, ensuring that surrogates were well-informed, healthy, and genuinely committed to helping couples achieve their dreams of parenthood. Our case manager, Sarah, guided us through the process. She provided profiles of potential surrogates, each with detailed information about their backgrounds, motivations, and health. We spent countless hours reviewing these profiles, hoping to find someone who resonated with us. After several interviews, we found a wonderful surrogate named Laura. Meeting Laura for the first time was a heartwarming experience. She had a warm smile and an easygoing demeanor that immediately put us at ease. Laura shared her reasons for becoming a surrogate, explaining that she wanted to help couples like us, because she believed in the importance of family and wanted to give the gift of parenthood to those who couldn't achieve it on their own. We felt an instant connection with Laura. She was kind, empathetic, and genuinely excited to help us bring our child into the world. We spent several meetings discussing our expectations, hopes, and concerns. Laura's openness and sincerity reassured us that she was the right person to join us on this journey. The legal and medical aspects of surrogacy were complex, but we navigated them with the support of our agency and legal advisors. The first step was to create a detailed surrogacy agreement that outlined everyone's rights and responsibilities. This agreement was crucial to ensure that all parties were protected and that there was a clear understanding of the process. Our legal advisor, Emily, was experienced in surrogacy law and guided us through the intricacies of the agreement. We discussed every aspect in detail, from medical procedures to financial arrangements, to the involvement of the surrogate in our child's life. The goal was to create a comprehensive document that addressed all potential scenarios and ensured that everyone felt secure and respected. However, our sense of anticipation and joy was abruptly disrupted by our parents' reactions when we shared our plans with them. We had expected some questions and perhaps a bit of discomfort given their traditional views, but nothing could have prepared us for the intensity of their opposition. The first confrontation came during a dinner at my parents' house. We had planned a special evening to share our news, hoping that the joyful atmosphere would help them embrace our decision. As we sat around the dinner table, Sophia and I carefully explained our journey so far, the consultations, the legal preparations, and our connection with Laura. My parents listened quietly at first, their expressions growing more strained as we spoke. My father was the first to break the silence. "I don't understand why you can't just do it the natural way," he said, his voice laced with confusion and disappointment. "One of you should be carrying the child. It seems so impersonal, having someone else do it." His words stung. I had anticipated some resistance, but his outright rejection felt like a blow. I tried to explain our reasoning again, emphasizing Sophia's discomfort with IVF and our desire to find a solution that felt right for both of us. But my father was unmoved. My mother, who had been silent until then, chimed in. "We thought we'd see you with a baby bump, Emma. We thought it would be a part of you. Surrogacy feels so detached, so clinical." A similar confrontation occurred when we spoke to Sophia's parents via a video call. We had hoped that explaining everything in detail would help them understand, but Ingrid's voice trembled with emotion as she expressed her disapproval. "This isn't how we imagined becoming grandparents. We thought one of you would carry the baby. It feels so detached, having a surrogate." Lars, usually more reserved, was visibly upset. Why go through all this when you can just carry the child yourselves? It doesn't make sense to us. The discussions quickly escalated into heated arguments. Both sets of parents were adamant that surrogacy was not the right choice for us. They brought up concerns about the emotional bond between us and our future child, societal perceptions, and their own expectations of what family should look like. They couldn't understand why we would choose a path that seemed so unconventional and complicated to them. Our parents' arguments were emotionally charged and often harsh. They accused us of taking the easy way out, of not considering the emotional implications for the child, and of disregarding their feelings and expectations. It was heartbreaking to hear such accusations from people we loved and respected. Sophia tried to explain our reasons and the emotional journey that had led us to choose surrogacy. She spoke about her discomfort with IVF and how surrogacy felt like the best solution for us. But our parents were unmoved. They viewed our decision as an abandonment of traditional family values. The arguments became more intense, with accusations and harsh words flying back and forth. I felt caught in the middle, trying to mediate between Sophia and our parents, but it was clear that we were facing a deep and painful divide. The hurt and frustration on both sides were evident, and it felt like we were stuck in an impasse. The emotional toll of these conflicts was significant. Sophia and I found ourselves questioning our decision and feeling torn between our own desires and our parents' expectations. The stress and strain of these confrontations affected our daily lives, leading to sleepless nights and tense conversations. I felt a profound sense of betrayal and disappointment. I had always imagined that our parents would support us unconditionally, but their harsh words and rigid stances made me question everything. I struggled with feelings of guilt and anger, torn between wanting to make them happy and staying true to what felt right for us. Sophia, who had already battled significant emotional turmoil over IVF, was deeply hurt by the lack of support from our families. She felt misunderstood and isolated, her fears and concerns dismissed as irrational. The pressure from our parents to conform to traditional notions of family and pregnancy only added to her distress. After the intense argument at home, Sophia and I decided to temporarily stop our surrogacy plans. The conflicts with our parents and the emotional strain it placed on us were too overwhelming to continue without a pause. The decision to take a break felt like a relief but also left a void. Our dreams of starting a family were put on hold, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on us. We tried to focus on our work to distract ourselves from the emotional turmoil. Sophia threw herself into her projects at the engineering firm, taking on more responsibilities and working late into the evenings. Her promotion had brought new challenges, and she channeled her energy into excelling in her role. I immersed myself in my teaching career, preparing lessons, and spending extra time with my students. While work provided a temporary escape, the unresolved issue of starting a family lingered in the background. The conflict over starting a family became an increasingly pressing issue between Sophia and me. Despite all our love and the depth of our relationship, this one topic seemed insurmountable. I had tried to bring it up multiple times, hoping for a breakthrough, but every discussion ended the same way. Sophia repeated her discomfort with IVF and the idea of using donor sperm, but her explanations never seemed to go beyond that. It felt so irrational to me. I was trying to be understanding and patient, but I was reaching my limit. Sophia's stance felt like a barrier I couldn't penetrate. She would say she didn't want a man's cum in me, and that would be the end of it. I tried to delve deeper, to understand her underlying fears and concerns, but she would shut down or deflect. It was incredibly frustrating. I couldn't understand why she was being so resistant to something that seemed like a logical and effective solution to our desire for a family. What made it even more confusing was how loving and kind Sophia was in every other aspect of our life. She was attentive, affectionate, and went out of her way to make me happy. She cooked my favorite meals, planned surprise dates, and was there for me emotionally in every way. It was like she was compensating for the tension around our family planning discussions by being extra attentive in other areas. This only added to my confusion and frustration. I felt like I was living in two parallel worlds. One where our relationship was perfect, and another where we were stuck in an endless loop of disagreement and misunderstanding. I tried to bring up the topic gently, avoiding pushing too hard to not come off as annoying or demanding. I would mention it casually during our evening walks or while we were cuddling on the couch. But each time, Sophia's response was the same. She would reiterate her discomfort, and the conversation would stall. I began to feel like I was hitting a brick wall. It wasn't that Sophia was refusing to talk about it. She would engage in the conversation, but it always ended at the same point. I asked her if she didn't want children right now, suggesting that maybe we were rushing the process. I wanted to reassure her that we didn't have to make any decisions immediately, and that we could take our time. But Sophia insisted that she did want children. Her words and her actions were at odds, and I couldn't reconcile the two. The emotional toll of this unresolved conflict was heavy. I loved Sophia deeply and wanted to understand her, but I felt shut out. I was in a state of constant confusion and frustration. Every time I tried to make sense of her feelings, I ended up more baffled. It was as if she was keeping a part of herself locked away, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach it. Sophia's kindness and affection made it even harder. She was doing everything she could to show her love for me, but it felt like a distraction from the real issue. I appreciated her efforts, but it didn't solve the problem. Instead, it made me feel guilty for pushing her on the subject of children. I wondered if I was being unreasonable or if I was missing something important. I found myself questioning everything. Did Sophia really want children, or was she just saying that to avoid disappointing me? Was there something deeper that she wasn't sharing? I knew her so well, yet in this one crucial aspect, I felt like I didn't know her at all. It was a painful realization. The persistent disagreement with Sophia and my own feelings of inadequacy led to a period of intense self-doubt and reflection. I spent countless hours thinking about our situation, trying to understand Sophia's perspective while grappling with my own emotions. I questioned whether I was being unreasonable or if there was something more I could do to bridge the gap between us. Sharing my feelings with others was a challenge. I wanted to talk to my friends and family about the conflict, but I was afraid of offending anyone or making the situation worse. I felt trapped between my desire to resolve the issue and my fear of causing more pain. The weight of the unresolved conflict was a constant burden, and I often found myself lying awake at night, consumed by worry and uncertainty. Work became my refuge during this difficult time. I threw myself into my teaching career with renewed vigor, finding solace in the familiar routines and the joy of working with my students. I volunteered for extra projects, attended professional development workshops, and even started a new after-school program focused on creative writing. The satisfaction of making a difference in my students' lives provided a temporary reprieve from my personal struggles. Sophia also found solace in her work. Her engineering projects were demanding and required her full attention, which helped her cope with the emotional strain at home. She achieved several milestones in her career, earning accolades and recognition from her peers and superiors. While her professional success was gratifying, it also highlighted the growing distance between us as we each dealt with our personal pain in different ways. Despite my best efforts to cope and find a resolution, the conflict between Sophia and me remained unresolved. The surrogacy plans that had once filled us with hope and excitement now seemed like a distant dream. Our relationship, once so strong and resilient, was strained to its breaking point. Sophia's persistence in maintaining her opinion on IVF was both admirable and frustrating. I admired her for standing by her beliefs and values, but I also felt deeply hurt that she couldn't compromise. My feelings of helplessness and inadequacy grew stronger, and I began to question whether our relationship could survive this level of conflict. As I continued to grapple with these emotions, I realized that part of my struggle was rooted in my own expectations and desires. I had always envisioned a future where we could have a child and create a loving family together. The reality of our situation, with all its complexities and challenges, was far from that ideal. Sitting at my desk late at night, the room illuminated only by the soft glow of my desk lamp, my thoughts are as dim and uncertain as our future seems to be. My mind is a whirlpool of questions, swirling endlessly without finding any solid answers. How did we get to this point? When did our mutual dreams start to feel like battlegrounds? The issue of having a child, once a shared dream filled with hope and excitement, has become a source of division and discord. It feels like we're both holding pieces of a puzzle that no longer fit together. I love Sophia deeply, more than I ever thought possible. Our relationship has always been built on a foundation of mutual respect, understanding, and unwavering support. Yet now, I find myself questioning everything. I wonder how I should navigate this delicate issue of starting a family without disappointing my parents, who have their own expectations and dreams for us, and without further fraying the bond between Sophia and me. I find myself trapped in a cycle of guilt and frustration. I feel guilty for wanting something that causes Sophia so much pain, and frustrated that we can't find a way to move forward together. My parents' expectations add another layer of complexity to the situation. They have their own dreams for us, dreams that include a grandchild. I don't want to disappoint them, but I also don't want to force Sophia into a situation that makes her uncomfortable. The house is silent, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards. Sophia is asleep in the next room, and I envy her ability to find some semblance of peace, even if only in sleep. I wish I could quiet my mind long enough to find some clarity, to see a way through this darkness. I love Sophia more than words can express. She is my partner, my confidant, my best friend. I want to build a future with her. A future that includes the laughter and chaos of children. But I also want her to feel safe and respected. To know that her feelings and fears are valid. As I sit there, the quiet of the night pressing in around me, I wonder how we can mend this rift. How can we find a solution that honors both of our needs and desires? Sophia and Emma's story is a deeply moving and multifaceted narrative that offers valuable lessons on relationships, love, and the challenges of starting a family. Their journey underscores the importance of understanding, empathy, and communication in overcoming personal and societal obstacles. Here are some profound lessons drawn from their experiences. One of the central lessons from Sophia and Emma's journey is the power of empathy and understanding in relationships. Initially, Emma struggled to comprehend Sophia's discomfort with IVF. To her, the procedure seemed like a logical solution to their desire for a child. However, Sophia's feelings were deeply rooted in emotional and psychological concerns, including societal expectations and traditional gender roles. Emma's journey to understanding Sophia's perspective underscores the necessity of approaching conflicts in relationships with empathy. Effective communication isn't just about talking, it's about listening deeply and validating each other's feelings. By seeking to understand Sophia's deeper fears and insecurities, Emma learned to appreciate her partner's perspective, which was crucial in finding a path forward. This lesson teaches us that empathy is a critical component of any relationship. Taking the time to truly understand a partner's feelings and concerns can help bridge gaps and resolve conflicts that may seem insurmountable. It's not enough to merely acknowledge a partner's discomfort. One must delve deeper to understand the root causes and address them compassionately. Another significant lesson from their story is the challenge of balancing family expectations with personal values and desires. Both Sophia and Emma faced considerable pressure from their parents, who had traditional views on family and parenthood. Their parents' resistance to surrogacy and insistence that one of them become pregnant highlighted the generational and cultural differences that often complicate family dynamics. This aspect of their story highlights the importance of finding a balance between respecting family opinions and staying true to one's values and needs. While family support and approval are important, personal decisions, especially those as significant as starting a family, must align with what feels right for the couple involved. Sophia and Emma's experience underscores the importance of open dialogue and finding common ground. It shows that while it's essential to consider family expectations, ultimately, the decisions about starting a family must reflect the couple's shared vision and values. This lesson is particularly relevant for anyone navigating similar pressures from family or society. Respecting individual perspectives within a relationship is another crucial lesson from their story. Sophia's discomfort with IVF was not something Emma could initially understand, but it was a deeply personal issue for Sophia. The journey to finding a solution that worked for both of them required Emma to respect Sophia's feelings, even when they didn't align with her own perspective. Am I the A for abandoning my boyfriend after he went through a severe health crisis and his child was diagnosed with HIV? I am Ellen, a 53-year-old woman who has seen a fair share of life's ups and downs. My story intertwines with Richard's, a 62-year-old man whose presence in my life brought both joy and complexity. Our paths crossed in the spring of 2005, at a charity event that neither of us had any real interest in attending but did so out of a sense of duty. It was one of those evenings filled with polite conversations and superficial exchanges, the kind that leaves one wondering why they bothered to attend. Amidst the mundane chatter and clinking of wine glasses, Richard and I found ourselves repeatedly reaching for the same appetizers at the buffet table. What started as light-hearted banter over the shrimp cocktail turned into a deeper conversation. Richard's laugh was hearty and infectious, and it drew me in. His hair, a mix of black and gray, framed a face that seemed to carry both wisdom and weariness. There was something comforting about his presence, something genuine in a room full of pretense. Our initial connection was rooted in shared interests. We both had a deep appreciation for jazz and a love for classic films. Our dates often involved long walks through the park, where we'd talk about everything from the nuances of a Miles Davis track to the intricate storytelling in Fellini's films. Richard was a widower who spoke of his late wife with a tenderness that resonated with me. It was clear that he had loved deeply and lost profoundly, a fact that made him all the more endearing to me. I had been divorced for over a decade by then, and while the scars from that relationship had mostly healed, they left behind a cautious heart. My marriage had ended in a painful and drawn-out process, filled with emotional upheavals and legal battles that took their toll on me. The experience had made me wary of opening up to anyone again. I had built walls around my heart, convinced that vulnerability would only lead to more pain. Trusting someone else seemed like an insurmountable risk, and I had resigned myself to a life of solitude, finding solace in my independence and self-reliance. When I met Richard, I was not looking for love. In fact, I was content with my single life, focusing on my career, my hobbies, and my close-knit group of friends. Richard, however, had a way of gently easing into my life, his presence unassuming yet steadily becoming a fixture. He understood loss in a way that resonated with me deeply. As a widower, he had faced his own profound grief and loneliness, and this shared understanding of loss became a foundation for our connection. Richard's approach to our budding relationship was marked by patience and kindness. He never rushed me or pushed for more than I was ready to give. Instead, he offered a steady, reassuring presence that slowly chipped away at my reservations. His gentle demeanor and the genuine warmth he showed me began to erode the walls I had built around my heart. Our early days together were filled with simple, quiet moments that brought us closer. We spent long afternoons walking in the park, sharing stories about our pasts, our hopes, and our fears. Richard had a knack for making me laugh, his sense of humor lightening the heaviness that sometimes weighed on my spirit. We discovered a shared love for jazz and classic films, spending evenings listening to records or watching old movies. These shared interests created a sense of companionship that felt both comforting and natural. Richard's empathy and understanding played a crucial role in building my trust. He never dismissed my past or the pain I had endured. Instead, he listened, offering support without judgment. When I spoke about my divorce, the betrayal, and the heartache, he would hold my hand, his presence a silent assurance that he was there for me. This empathy made it easier for me to open up, to let go of some of the fears that had held me back. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, our relationship grew stronger. We found comfort in each other's company, creating a rhythm that felt right. Richard's understanding of my need for space and his respect for my boundaries made all the difference. He knew when to give me room and when to offer a comforting embrace. This balance allowed our bond to deepen in a way that felt safe and secure. Our companionship became a source of strength for both of us. For Richard, I provided a new chapter of connection and care after the loss of his wife. For me, Richard became a partner who understood my cautious heart and honored it. Together, we navigated the complexities of our pasts, finding joy in the present and hope for the future. Richard's consistent kindness and our shared moments of joy slowly healed the lingering wounds from my previous relationship. I found myself looking forward to our time together, feeling a sense of peace and happiness that I hadn't felt in years. The cautious heart that once dominated my emotions began to soften, replaced by a growing love and trust for Richard. However, Richard's health was always a looming concern. He had chronic health issues, including hypertension and diabetes, which required careful management. Despite this, I was ready to stand by him, prepared to face whatever challenges came our way. My love for him was deep and unwavering, and I envisioned a future where we could navigate his health concerns together, offering each other support and companionship. In the early years of my relationship with Richard, our bond grew strong, nourished by shared interests and mutual understanding. Richard, at 62, had already faced significant health challenges, including hypertension and diabetes. Despite these issues, his zest for life was infectious, and it was this enthusiasm that drew me to him. At 53, I was acutely aware of the potential difficulties that lay ahead, but my commitment to Richard was unwavering. As time went on, the topic of marriage naturally arose. For me, marriage symbolized a formal commitment, a way to legally and publicly affirm the bond we shared. I imagined a future where we would navigate life's challenges together, with the security that marriage provides. Richard, however, had a different perspective. Having been through a bitter divorce, he was hesitant to remarry. His primary concern was to ensure that his estate would go to his children without any complications. He believed that our love did not need a legal stamp to validate it. I understood Richard's concerns and respected his desire to prioritize his children's inheritance. However, I also needed to protect my own interests. I made it clear that while I was willing to support him and stand by his side, I would not make the same sacrifices a wife might without the legal acknowledgement of marriage. This was not about mistrust but about ensuring that my contributions and sacrifices were recognized and valued. During one of our more serious conversations about the future, I proposed a compromise. I suggested that he make me his medical power of attorney, which would allow me to make decisions on his behalf in case of a medical emergency. Additionally, I requested the right to continue living in his house if I outlived him. These requests were reasonable, considering the level of care and support I was providing. However, Richard declined, not wanting to complicate matters for his children. Despite these unresolved issues, our relationship continued to thrive. I took pride in maintaining my financial independence. I purchased a condo and rented it out, ensuring I had a steady income stream. This decision was a practical one, allowing me to support Richard without compromising my own financial stability. It was important to me that I remained self-sufficient, even as I devoted much of my time and energy to our relationship. The more we talked about our future, the more I realized the complexities of balancing love with practical considerations. I had always believed in the importance of mutual respect and support in a relationship. Richard's reluctance to marry, and his refusal to grant me any formal recognition made me question the depth of his commitment. While I understood his reasons, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disappointment. I wanted to believe that our love was strong enough to overcome these obstacles, but the reality was more complicated. Over time, I learned to accept the limitations of our relationship. I focused on the positive aspects, our shared interests, our deep conversations, and the companionship we provided each other. I found solace in the fact that, despite our differences, we had built a meaningful connection. However, the underlying tension about our future and the unresolved issues regarding our commitment always lingered in the background. It happened about 6 months ago. Richard, my boyfriend of 15 years, suffered a transient ischemic attack, TIA, often referred to as a mini-stroke. The event was sudden and terrifying, sending a shockwave through the comfortable routine we had established over the years. It was a typical evening. Richard and I were enjoying a quiet night at home. We had just finished dinner and were sitting in the living room, him reading the newspaper and me with a book. Suddenly, Richard slumped in his chair, his face contorted with pain. His speech became slurred, and his right arm went limp. Panic gripped me as I realized something was terribly wrong. My immediate fear was that he was having a full-blown stroke. I acted quickly, dialing 911 with trembling hands. The dispatcher assured me that help was on the way, but those minutes felt like an eternity. I held Richard's hand, trying to comfort him while silently praying for the ambulance to arrive. When the paramedics finally came, they moved with practiced efficiency, loading Richard onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. I followed them to the hospital, my heart racing with fear and worry. At the hospital, Richard was taken into the emergency room for immediate evaluation. I was left in the waiting area, filled with anxiety and uncertainty. The sterile environment, with its harsh fluorescent lights and the incessant beeping of medical equipment, only heightened my distress. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as I waited for any news about Richard's condition. Then, his daughter and ex-wife arrived. His daughter, whom I had always found somewhat distant, immediately took charge. She approached the nurses, demanding updates on her father's condition. Her mother, Richard's ex-wife, followed closely behind. Their presence added an unexpected layer of tension to an already fraught situation. They barely acknowledged me as they marched straight into the emergency room. A nurse soon approached me, conveying a message from Richard's daughter. They wanted to be alone with him. They insisted on being together as a family during this critical time, effectively pushing me aside. Despite my protests, I was asked to leave the room. The nurse, although sympathetic, explained that it was best to respect their wishes. Standing in the hallway, I felt a mix of anger, frustration, and profound sadness. I had been the one to call the ambulance, the one who had rushed him to the hospital, yet here I was, excluded from the room, cast aside by the very people who had not been there when it mattered. It was a stark reminder of my unofficial status in Richard's life, despite our deep connection and years of shared experiences. I paced the hallway, trying to process my emotions. The exclusion stung deeply, highlighting the fragile and uncertain nature of my role in Richard's life. I had been his partner for 15 years, but in this critical moment, I was treated as an outsider. The emotional impact of being marginalized by his family was significant. I felt like I was invisible, my contributions and care disregarded. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor finally emerged with an update. Richard's condition had stabilized. The TIA had been a temporary blockage of blood flow to the brain, a warning sign of potential more severe issues in the future. He would need to stay in the hospital for further observation and treatment. Relief washed over me, tempered by the exhaustion and emotional strain of the day's events. As Richard's daughter and ex-wife continued their vigil inside the room, I remained outside, grappling with my feelings. The hospital staff, seeing my distress, offered kind words and gestures, but it did little to alleviate the sense of alienation I felt. I spent the night in the waiting area, refusing to leave until I could see Richard myself. The following morning, Richard's daughter stepped out to get coffee. Seizing the moment, I quietly entered Richard's room. He was lying in bed, looking frail but conscious. When he saw me, his eyes softened with relief. I sat beside him, holding his hand, and we talked in hushed tones. He apologized for his daughter's behavior, but the damage was already done. The sense of exclusion and marginalization I had experienced could not be easily undone. After a brief visit, I was asked to leave again as his daughter returned. The emotional turmoil of the previous night replayed in my mind as I drove home. I felt a profound sense of betrayal and disillusionment. Despite my dedication and care, I had been treated as though I didn't belong. The drive home was long and silent, each mile filled with heavy thoughts. Once home, the familiar surroundings felt strangely alien. The events at the hospital had created a rift, making our shared space feel less like a haven, and more like a reminder of my uncertain place in Richard's life. I spent the day reflecting on our relationship, questioning my future with him. The following days were filled with routine hospital visits. I continued to bring Richard his favorite books and snacks, trying to provide comfort and normalcy. Our conversations were strained, overshadowed by the recent events. Richard was visibly troubled by his daughter's actions, but there was little he could do to change the dynamics of his family. One afternoon, during one of my visits, I found myself alone with Richard. We talked about the future, and I reiterated my desire to be included in his medical decisions and living arrangements. Richard, though sympathetic, remained firm in his stance. He did not want to complicate matters for his children. His refusal, though understandable, left me feeling unvalued and unsupported. Richard's condition slowly improved, and he was eventually discharged from the hospital. The drive home was filled with an uncomfortable silence. As we pulled into the driveway, I knew a difficult conversation awaited us. Over a cup of tea in the kitchen, I told Richard about my decision to move out. His reaction was a mix of disbelief and sorrow. He understood my reasons but pleaded with me to reconsider. I explained that while I loved him deeply, the events at the hospital had highlighted the limitations of our relationship. I needed to prioritize my own well-being and security, something I had neglected in my effort to support him. Richard listened, his expression a mix of regret and sadness. He apologized for the actions of his family, but the damage had been done. My mind was made up. Packing my belongings was a painful process. Each item I placed in the box felt like a piece of our shared history, a reminder of the life we had built together. The sense of loss was overwhelming, but I knew that this was the right decision for my own well-being. I moved into my condo, finding solace in the familiar surroundings and the sense of independence it provided. In the months that followed, Richard experienced more TIAs and was eventually unable to work. I struggled with feelings of guilt and sadness, questioning whether I had made the right decision. However, I also felt a sense of relief, knowing that I had reclaimed my autonomy and ensured my own stability. I continued to support Richard from a distance, ensuring that he had the care he needed. However, the dynamics of our relationship had fundamentally changed. However, I was wrong. Richard's daughter, Susan, had always been a complicated figure in our relationship. Though I had never had any major confrontations with her before, I had always sensed a certain animosity from her. She was in her mid-30s, a striking woman with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Susan had never fully accepted me into her father's life, always keeping me at arm's length, but her actions following Richard's TIA revealed a side of her that I hadn't seen before. A few weeks after I moved out, my phone rang late one evening. It was Susan. I answered, expecting a civil conversation at the very least. Instead, her voice, filled with venom, erupted on the other end of the line. She accused me of abandoning her father in his time of need, calling me selfish and heartless. Her words were a barrage of insults, each one sharper and more hurtful than the last. She claimed I had left because I couldn't handle the responsibility and that I had never truly cared for him. The conversation was short, but the impact was lasting. Her accusations were not just painful. They were deeply unfair. Susan's anger seemed to stem from a belief that I had somehow betrayed her father, but I knew the truth was more complex. When I left, I believed that it might be easier for her to take care of Richard without feeling like she had to compete with me for his attention. I thought she would welcome the opportunity to step up and take on a more significant role in his care. But her reaction suggested otherwise. The conversation left me shaken and doubting my decision, even though I knew deep down that I had made the right choice for myself. Despite the hostility from Susan, I continued to care for Richard from a distance. I called regularly to check on him and coordinated with his caregivers to ensure he had everything he needed. But Susan's words lingered in my mind, casting a shadow over my actions and making me question my motives. One night, about a month after that call, I was on my way to buy groceries. It was late, around 11 p.m., and the streets were quiet. As I walked past a local bar, I noticed someone familiar slipping inside. It was Susan. I was taken aback. Richard's condition required constant attention, and I couldn't help but wonder why she was at a bar instead of at home taking care of him. Curiosity and concern battled within me as I stood there, contemplating what I had just seen. I continued my errands, but the image of Susan entering the bar stayed with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. If Susan was out drinking late at night, who was looking after Richard? This question gnawed at me, and I felt a growing sense of unease. Had I been wrong to trust that she would take care of him in my absence? The thought that Richard might not be receiving the care he needed was troubling. The next day, I decided to call Richard's nurse to get an update on his condition. The nurse assured me that Richard was stable and that he was receiving the necessary care. However, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Susan's late-night outing had planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Was she as committed to her father's well-being as she claimed to be? The incident made me question everything I thought I knew about her. As the weeks went by, I tried to focus on my own life, but the sense of guilt and worry persisted. I continued to check in on Richard, and each time, I made sure to ask about his care and well-being. The responses were always positive, but Susan's behavior continued to trouble me. I began to realize that her anger towards me might not have been just about my leaving. There seemed to be more to her story, and her actions hinted at a deeper complexity. One afternoon, I could no longer contain my growing concern for Richard's well-being. Susan's erratic behavior and frequent absences had become too troubling to ignore. Deciding that a direct confrontation was necessary, I picked up the phone and called her, requesting a meeting. To my surprise, Susan agreed without much resistance, and we arranged to meet at a local cafe the following day. As I walked into the cafe, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Susan was already seated at a small table near the window, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mixture of wariness and irritation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead, and slid into the chair opposite her. "Thank you for meeting with me, Susan," I began, trying to keep my tone calm and neutral. She nodded curtly, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you want, Ellen?" I decided to address the issue head-on. "I saw you at the bar the other night," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm concerned about the times you're away, and how it affects your father's care." Susan's eyes widened in surprise, and then her expression shifted to one of defensiveness. "I'm allowed to have my own life," she snapped. "I need a break from the stress of taking care of my father. You don't understand how hard it is." Her response, while reasonable on the surface, did little to alleviate my concerns. "I understand that everyone needs a break," I replied gently. "But Richard's condition requires consistent care. What arrangements are in place when you're not there?" Susan's agitation grew, and she leaned forward, her eyes flashing with anger. "Are you spying on me now? Trying to undermine everything I do? I'm doing the best I can, and you have no right to question me." I tried to remain calm, even as her accusations stung. "I'm not trying to undermine you, Susan. I just want to make sure Richard is getting the care he needs. I'm worried about him." "You're always worried," she spat, her voice rising. "But you're not here day in and day out dealing with all of this. It's easy for you to sit back and judge." The conversation was rapidly spiraling out of control. I could see that my questions were only fueling her anger, but I couldn't walk away without addressing my concerns. "Susan, please try to understand. This isn't about judging you. It's about ensuring that Richard is safe and well cared for." She glared at me, her face flushed with anger. "You think you know everything, don't you? You think you can just waltz in and fix things? Well, you can't. You don't know what it's like to be in my shoes." Her words cut deep and I felt a surge of frustration. "I'm not trying to take over, Susan. I just want to help. We both care about Richard, and we need to work together." But my words fell on deaf ears. Susan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm done here," she snapped. "Stay out of my way, Ellen. You're not helping anyone." With that, she stormed out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, stunned and disheartened. The conversation had ended abruptly, with no resolution and more questions than answers. I stared down at the table, feeling a mix of frustration and helplessness. I had hoped that a direct confrontation would clear the air and lead to a constructive solution, but it had only served to deepen the divide between us. As I left the cafe, I couldn't help but replay the conversation in my mind. Susan's defensiveness and anger were understandable to some extent, given the immense pressure she was under. But her refusal to discuss Richard's care arrangements left me deeply concerned. I worried that her stress and frequent absences were putting Richard at risk. In the days that followed, I continued to wrestle with my feelings. I loved Richard deeply, and the thought of him not being properly cared for was unbearable. Yet Susan's reaction made it clear that my involvement was unwelcome. I was caught between my desire to ensure Richard's well-being, and the reality that my presence was creating more conflict. One evening I decided to visit Richard unannounced. I needed to see for myself how he was doing. When I arrived at his house, I was greeted by one of his caregivers, who seemed surprised but not displeased to see me. I found Richard in his room, sitting in his armchair and reading a book. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, his eyes lighting up with a warmth that melted away some of my anxiety. We talked for a while, and I asked him about his care. Richard assured me that he was being well taken care of, but there was a hint of sadness in his voice. He missed our time together, and I could see the strain that Susan's presence was causing him. It became clear that while he appreciated her efforts, the dynamic between them was fraught with tension. As I left that evening, I felt a renewed sense of resolve. I decided to maintain my distance but remain vigilant. I continued to check in regularly with Richard's caregivers and ensured that they had my contact information in case of any emergencies. I also made a point to visit Richard more often, making sure to coordinate with his caregivers so as not to disrupt his routine. The months that followed were challenging. Susan's hostility towards me did not abate, and each interaction with her was strained. However, my visits with Richard brought a measure of peace to both of us. He appreciated my efforts, and I found comfort in knowing that I was still able to contribute to his well-being in some capacity. On one particularly cold afternoon, I decided to visit Richard unannounced. As I approached the house, I heard raised voices coming from inside. It was unmistakably Susan, her tone sharp and accusatory. I paused at the door, hesitant to enter but compelled by concern. I strained to hear the words exchanged but could only make out fragments of the argument. "I'm tired of this." Susan's voice rang out, filled with frustration. "You're not doing your job properly. You're fired." The front door swung open and Richard's caretaker emerged, her face flushed and eyes downcast. She almost collided with me as she hurried out. I reached out to stop her, gently placing a hand on her arm. "What happened? Why are you leaving?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She looked up at me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. It's nothing. Just a misunderstanding," she muttered, shaking her head sadly before continuing down the walkway, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Susan had fired the caretaker, a woman who had been providing diligent care for Richard. My heart sank. I knew I had to go inside and check on Richard, but I also felt an increasing unease about Susan's actions and their impact on her father's well-being. When I entered the house, Richard was sitting in his usual chair, looking more worn out than usual. He greeted me with a weak smile, but his eyes reflected a deep sadness. "Ellen, it's good to see you," he said, his voice weary. I sat down beside him, taking his hand in mine. "What happened with the caretaker, Richard? Why did Susan fire her?" He sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. "Susan thinks the caretaker isn't doing enough. She's been very stressed lately, taking on more than she can handle. I tried to intervene, but Susan can be quite stubborn." I felt a surge of anger mixed with sadness. Richard needed consistent care, and Susan's behavior was jeopardizing his health. I couldn't understand why she would dismiss someone who had been doing their job well, especially when Richard's condition required professional attention. Over the next few weeks I noticed a decline in Richard's health. Without a dedicated caretaker, the burden fell entirely on Susan, who seemed increasingly overwhelmed and irritable. Every time I visited, Richard appeared more fatigued, and the atmosphere in the house was tense. Susan's presence, or rather, her absence, loomed over everything, a constant source of stress. One day, I decided to have a candid conversation with Richard. I needed to understand what was happening and how I could help. We sat in the living room, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. "Richard, I'm worried about you," I began gently. "You need proper care, and with the caretaker gone, I'm not sure you're getting it. What can we do to make things better?" He looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and resignation. "Ellen, I appreciate your concern, I really do. But Susan insists on handling things herself. She feels it's her responsibility." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "But it's clear she's struggling. Maybe we can find a compromise? Another caretaker, someone Susan approves of?" Richard shook his head slowly. "I've tried suggesting that, but Susan is very particular. She doesn't trust easily, and she's determined to do things her way." The conversation left me feeling helpless. I wanted to support Richard, but Susan's interference made it nearly impossible. My visits continued, each one filled with a growing sense of frustration and concern. Richard's health was deteriorating, and Susan's handling of the situation was only making things worse. One evening, as I was leaving Richard's house, I ran into the former caretaker at the grocery store. She looked healthier and more relaxed than the last time I'd seen her, but there was still a lingering sadness in her eyes. I approached her, hoping to gain some insight into what had happened. "Hi, it's good to see you again," I said warmly. "I'm sorry about what happened at Richard's. Can you tell me more about why Susan fired you?" She hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. "Susan is difficult to work with," she finally admitted. "She has very high standards and gets frustrated easily. I tried my best, but nothing seemed to satisfy her. I think she's under a lot of pressure, and it's affecting her judgment." I nodded, absorbing her words. "Thank you for telling me. I just want to make sure Richard is okay. He needs proper care." The caretaker gave me a sad smile. "He does. Just keep an eye on him. And if you can, try to talk to Susan. She needs help too, even if she doesn't realize it." I decided to have a direct conversation with Susan. I called her and suggested meeting to discuss Richard's care. To my surprise, she agreed to meet at a local cafe the next morning. I hoped that a neutral setting would help facilitate a productive conversation. As I arrived at the cafe, I saw Susan already seated, a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked tired, her face etched with stress and fatigue. I took a deep breath and approached her table, determined to keep the conversation focused and constructive. "Good morning, Susan," I greeted her, trying to sound as calm and supportive as possible. "Morning," she replied curtly, barely glancing up from her coffee. I sat down and took a moment to gather my thoughts. "Susan, I've been really worried about your father. His health is declining, and I think we need to find a more sustainable solution for his care. I'd like to recommend hiring a professional nurse." Susan's reaction was immediate and intense. Her eyes flashed with anger, and she leaned forward, her voice low and venomous. "Who the hell do you think you are, Ellen? This is my family, my responsibility. You have no right to interfere." Taken aback by her hostility, I tried to remain composed. "Susan, I'm not trying to interfere. I just want to make sure Richard gets the care he needs. This is about his well-being, not about us." She laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Sure, that's what you want everyone to believe. But I know better. You're just worried about his estate, aren't you? Making sure you get a piece of the pie." Her words stung and I felt my face flush with anger. "That's not true, and you know it. I care about Richard, and I've been part of his life for 15 years. This is about his health, not his money." Susan's expression hardened, and she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "I don't need your help, Ellen. And I don't need you meddling in our family affairs. Stay out of it." Frustrated and hurt, I took a deep breath, trying to find a way to reach her. "Susan, this isn't about control or money. It's about making sure your father is taken care of. We need to work together." But it was clear that Susan was not willing to listen. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm done here. Don't ever talk to me about this again. And stay away from my father's business." With that, she walked out of the cafe, leaving me sitting there, stunned and disheartened. I sat for a while, trying to process the confrontation. My intentions had been genuine, but Susan's accusations and hostility had made it clear that she saw me as a threat rather than an ally. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't help but wonder about Susan's motivations. Her refusal to accept help seemed rooted in something deeper than just distrust of me. I knew her relationship with her mother was strained. Susan had mentioned once, in passing, that her mother had remarried and started a new family, leaving Susan feeling abandoned and redundant. Perhaps her need to control her father's care was a way to assert some sense of importance and stability in her life. 2 weeks had passed since my last visit to Richard. During that time, I had made a conscious decision to step back, to focus on my own life and well-being. It wasn't easy, but I felt that after all the years of navigating the complexities of our relationship and dealing with Susan's hostility, I needed to be a bit selfish. I needed to find my own space and reclaim my independence. The first few days were the hardest. I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and worry about Richard's condition. But I reminded myself that I had already done so much, and it was time for me to live my life without the constant burden of his declining health and family drama. I immersed myself in hobbies I had neglected, reconnected with old friends, and tried to find joy in the little things again. Slowly, I began to feel a sense of relief and freedom. Then, one evening, my phone rang. It was Richard. My heart skipped a beat as I answered, unsure of what to expect. "Hi Richard," I greeted him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ellen, it's good to hear your voice," he replied, but there was a sadness in his tone that I couldn't ignore. "I've missed you. You haven't been by to visit." His words hit me hard. I had been so focused on distancing myself that I hadn't considered how my absence might affect him. Despite everything, I still cared deeply for Richard, and the thought of him feeling lonely pained me. "I'm sorry, Richard," I said honestly. "I've been trying to take some time for myself, to focus on my own life for a bit." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Richard spoke again. "I understand, Ellen. But I've been feeling very lonely. Susan often leaves me alone at night, going out and sometimes not coming back until late. I've been having to manage on my own." His words were like a dagger to my heart. I felt a surge of pity and frustration. Susan had assured me she would take care of him, but it seemed she was failing in her responsibilities. I couldn't ignore the pang of guilt that welled up inside me. "Richard, I didn't know," I replied, my voice softening. "I thought Susan was taking care of you." "She tries, but she's not always here," he admitted. "I understand you need your own life, but it's been hard without you around." I took a deep breath, grappling with my emotions. "Richard, I think maybe we've grown apart. It's been difficult for both of us, and I'm not sure where we stand anymore." His silence spoke volumes. I knew my words were harsh, but they were the truth. Our relationship had been strained for a long time, and the events of the past months had only widened the gap between us. "I see," he finally said, his voice tinged with sadness. I just wish things were different. We talked for a little while longer, but the conversation was strained and filled with unspoken words. When we finally said goodbye, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. I had been honest with him, but it didn't make the situation any easier. The days that followed were filled with introspection. I couldn't shake the feeling of pity for Richard, knowing he was often left alone. Despite everything, I still cared deeply for him, and the thought of him suffering weighed heavily on my conscience. I wondered if I had made the right decision by stepping back, or if I had been too selfish. One evening, as I sat in my living room reflecting on everything, I received another call from Richard. This time, his voice was more subdued. Ellen, I know things have been difficult. But I need your help, he said, sounding more vulnerable than I had ever heard him before. Susan has been out almost every night, and I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. His plea tugged at my heartstrings. I knew I couldn't ignore him. Despite the decision to distance myself, I couldn't abandon him completely. I'll come by tomorrow, I said gently. We'll figure something out. The next day I visited Richard. He looked more fragile than ever, and it was clear that he had been struggling. We sat down together, and he opened up about the challenges he had been facing. Susan's behavior had become increasingly erratic, and her absences were taking a toll on him. She often left without explanation, and he was left to fend for himself. I don't know what's gotten into her, Richard said, his voice filled with worry. She used to be so responsible, but now it's like she's avoiding me. I listened, feeling a mixture of frustration and compassion. Susan's actions were unacceptable, and Richard deserved better care. But I also knew that confronting Susan directly would likely lead to more conflict. Richard, I'm going to help you get through this, I said firmly. We'll find a solution together. We discussed various options, including reaching out to other family members and finding additional professional help. I suggested contacting a home care agency to provide more consistent support, and Richard agreed. The following days were busy as I coordinated with care providers and ensured Richard's needs were met. I also spoke with Emily, the nurse who had been helping Richard part-time, and arranged for her to increase her visits. Emily was a godsend, and her presence provided much-needed stability. During this time, I also attempted to reach out to Susan, hoping to address the situation diplomatically. I called her and left messages, but she didn't respond. It was clear that she was avoiding both me and the responsibilities of caring for her father. One evening, while I was at Richard's house, Susan finally returned home. It was late, and she looked disheveled and exhausted. She seemed surprised to see me there, but her surprise quickly turned to anger. What are you doing here? She demanded, her voice sharp. I'm here to help Richard, I replied calmly. He's been struggling, and we need to find a better solution for his care. Susan scoffed, crossing her arms. I don't need your help, Ellen. This is my family, my responsibility. It's clear that you're overwhelmed, Susan, I said gently. There's no shame in asking for help. Richard needs consistent care, and I think we should work together to make sure he gets it. Her eyes flashed with anger. You just want to interfere so you can get your hands on his estate. I know your type. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. This isn't about money, Susan. It's about Richard's well-being. We both care about him, and he deserves the best care possible. Susan's hostility didn't abate, but she didn't argue further. She turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling both frustrated and determined. Recently I focused on reclaiming my own life, but my concern for Richard never truly faded. I still called to check in on him and coordinated with his caregivers to ensure he had everything he needed. Despite our strained relationship and Susan's ongoing hostility, my love for Richard remained steadfast. Last month, while I was out running errands, I received a call from Richard's nurse. Her voice was calm but urgent. Ellen, Richard has had a fall. He's being taken to the hospital now. I thought you should know. My heart raced, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. The drive there felt interminable, my mind racing with worry about Richard's condition. I prayed that he would be okay. When I arrived at the hospital, I rushed to the emergency room. I found Richard lying in a hospital bed, gradually waking up. Relief washed over me as I saw his eyes flutter open. He looked groggy but seemed to be regaining consciousness. Richard, I called softly, stepping closer to his bedside. How are you feeling? He turned his head slowly to look at me, a weak smile forming on his lips. Ellen, you're here, he murmured. I'm okay, I think, just a bit shaken up. I reached out and gently squeezed his hand. I'm so glad you're awake. You gave us all a scare. As I stood there, holding Richard's hand, the door to the room swung open, and Susan stumbled in. She reeked of alcohol, her movements unsteady and her eyes wild. She glared at me with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "What are you doing here?" she slurred, her voice dripping with venom. "Haven't you done enough?" I tried to remain calm, but her words and the sight of her in such a state were infuriating. "Susan, I'm here to check on Richard. He's just had a fall and—" "Shut up!" she screamed, cutting me off. "You're always meddling, always trying to interfere. This is my family, not yours." Her words were like a knife to the heart. I had come to help Richard, and here she was, drunk and belligerent, attacking me for caring. The frustration and anger that had been building up inside me for months finally reached a boiling point. "Susan, you're drunk, you need to leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't helping anyone." "Don't tell me what to do," she shouted, stumbling closer. "You're nothing but a selfish, greedy—" Before I could stop myself, my hand flew up and I slapped her across the face. The sound echoed in the small hospital room, and for a moment, there was a stunned silence. Susan's eyes widened in shock, and then she lunged at me, but the nurses and a few other visitors quickly intervened, pulling us apart. "How dare you!" Susan screamed, trying to break free from their grasp. "You'll pay for this, you bitch!" I stood there, breathing heavily, my hand still stinging from the impact. The room was a blur of chaos and noise, but through it all, I could hear Richard's voice, weak but stern. "Ellen, go home," he said, his voice filled with disappointment. "You shouldn't have hit her. Just go." His words cut deeper than any of Susan's accusations. I looked at him, my heart breaking. "Richard, I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Just go," he repeated, closing his eyes as if to shut out the world. Tears filled my eyes as I turned and walked out of the room. The weight of Richard's disapproval and the confrontation with Susan hung heavily on me. As I left the hospital, I felt a profound sense of loss and sadness. The man I had cared for, loved, and supported for so many years had turned me away, and I didn't know if I could ever repair the damage that had been done. In the days that followed, I kept my distance from Richard and his family. I needed time to process what had happened and to figure out how to move forward. The guilt and sadness were overwhelming, and I struggled to find a way to reconcile my actions with my intentions. One evening, as I sat in my living room, the events replaying in my mind, I received a call from Emily. Her voice was gentle, filled with concern. "Ellen, I wanted to check in on you. I heard about what happened at the hospital." I sighed, feeling the weight of the past few days pressing down on me. "It's been really hard, Emily. I don't know what to do." "Ellen, you've been through a lot. It's understandable that you're feeling this way. But you've always had Richard's best interests at heart. Don't lose sight of that." Her words brought a small measure of comfort, but they didn't erase the pain. "Thank you, Emily. I just don't know how to fix this." "Sometimes it's not about fixing things," she said softly. "Sometimes it's about finding a way to move forward, even if it's not the way you envisioned." I spent the next few days reflecting on Emily's words. I realized that I couldn't change what had happened, but I could decide how to respond. I decided to write a letter to Richard, expressing my feelings and apologizing for my actions. It was the only way I could think of to convey my thoughts without causing more conflict. In the letter, I poured out my heart, explaining the frustration and worry that had driven me to slap Susan. I expressed my regret and apologized for my actions, hoping that Richard would understand my intentions, even if he couldn't forgive my outburst. A few days later, I mailed the letter, feeling a mixture of hope and trepidation. I didn't know if Richard would read it or if it would make any difference, but it was the only way I could think of to reach out to him. In the meantime, I focused on my own well-being. I continued to see friends, pursue hobbies, and take care of myself. It wasn't easy, but I knew I needed to find a way to move forward, even if it meant doing so without Richard in my life. Update. A month had passed, I hadn't heard from Richard or Susan since then, and I had decided to focus on my work and try to put the events behind me. Immersing myself in my job was a way to distract myself from the guilt and sadness that lingered after our falling out. My days became a blur of meetings, deadlines, and tasks that kept my mind occupied, leaving little room for personal reflection. However, life has a way of bringing back unresolved issues when you least expect it. One day, while catching up with a mutual acquaintance, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. The acquaintance mentioned, in a hushed tone, that Susan had contracted HIV due to her reckless behavior. The term disease of the century echoed in my mind, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a devastating revelation that added a new layer of complexity to everything that had happened. I tried to process this information as I drove home, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. Susan's illness explained so much about her erratic behavior and her hostility towards me. She had been struggling with a secret burden, one that she had not shared with anyone, least of all her father. The realization that Richard was unaware of his daughter's condition weighed heavily on me. He was already fighting his own health battles, and now his daughter was seeking death as an escape from her pain. As I pulled into my driveway, I felt a sense of dread and despair settle over me. The weight of what I had learned felt unbearable, and I knew that I couldn't simply ignore it. My heart ached for Richard and Susan, both suffering in their own ways, both isolated in their struggles. The walls of my home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison, trapping me with my thoughts and regrets. Over the next few days, I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my work. The knowledge of Susan's illness gnawed at me, making it impossible to concentrate. Each time I sat down at my desk, trying to immerse myself in my tasks, my mind would drift back to that devastating revelation. The weight of what I had learned seemed to press down on my shoulders, making even the simplest tasks feel insurmountable. I replayed our last conversation in my mind over and over again. The harsh words exchanged, the anger that had driven us apart, and the intense frustration that had boiled over into that confrontation. Knowing what I knew now, I felt a profound sense of guilt. Had I been too harsh? Had I failed to see the signs of her suffering? These questions haunted me, eroding my sense of peace and leaving me feeling helpless and conflicted. Every glance at my computer screen or stack of papers brought a pang of guilt. The emails and deadlines that once seemed so important now felt trivial in the face of Susan's struggle. My mind wandered back to that fateful day at the hospital. The look of pain in Susan's eyes, and the bitter accusations we had hurled at each other. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much pain she must have been in, pain that I had failed to recognize. It was clear to me that while Richard was struggling with his illness, his daughter was fighting her own battle, one that was equally devastating. Susan's reckless behavior, her late-night escapades, and her erratic absences were not just signs of irresponsibility. They were cries for help, symptoms of a deeper, more insidious pain that she had been hiding from everyone, including herself. The realization that she had been seeking death to escape her suffering was almost too much to bear. It was a stark reminder of the profound impact that our actions and relationships can have on those around us. As I reflected on this, I began to understand the broader implications of what I had learned. It was only then that I truly grasped how the relationship between husband and wife greatly affects the children's perception. Richard and his ex-wife's tumultuous relationship, their bitter divorce, and the emotional fallout had all left deep scars on Susan. She had grown up in an environment where love and support were conditional, where trust had been broken, and where emotional wounds had never truly healed. The dysfunction in Richard's marriage had created a ripple effect, shaping Susan's perceptions and behaviors in ways that were now painfully evident. Her desperate attempts to escape her reality, her anger, and her fear were all rooted in the experiences of her past. She had watched her parents' relationship fall apart, had felt the sting of abandonment from her mother, and had struggled to find her place in a world that seemed to offer no solace. As these realizations settled in, I felt a growing sense of responsibility. I couldn't change the past, but I could try to make amends for my part in the present. Susan needed support and understanding, not judgment and criticism. Richard needed to know the truth about his daughter's struggles so that he could be there for her in a meaningful way. But how could I approach this delicate situation without causing more harm?